Chapter 3276. If there's one, there'll be two, and then there'll be three. Maybe by the time we leave the Snowfield Brigade, we'll have a small team of sharpshooters. Perhaps Xia Jinyuan thought he was dreaming too much, but as he spoke, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. As soon as he laughed, the cold wind blew directly into his throat, causing him to choke and cough. It's so cold to sit in this thing in the middle of winter. Next time, we'll switch to the armored warrior. It's faster and can block the wind. You're the one who likes to look cool in the middle of winter. If it were me, I would have already driven the warrior. Pigeon shivered. It was so king cold. It was minus 11 degrees Celsius, and they were driving a convertible. How could they not feel cold? Next time, let them drive the snowmobile. I don't think Qing Niao has ever driven one before. Let her learn. Now that she's in our brigade, we can't always let her sacrifice. She should at least learn something to go back to school, Pigeon reminded. Xia Jinyuan nodded. He covered his nose with his gloved hands and urged Pigeon to drive faster. His body was so cold that there wasn't a trace of heat. The winter sun that had just risen was bright, but the heat it released was far from enough to make the two people in the convertible feel warm. He crossed his arms, and Pigeon couldn't help but laugh. Soon, Xia Jinyuan and Pigeon returned to the starting point of the training. They jumped out of the car, stiffly. Colonel Xia still chose a very cool pose. He opened the car door, kicked off with his long legs, and got out of the car. He strode over to Yi Qian and smiled. His results are good. I was just discussing with Pigeon that you should train with him over the next few days. Strive to make him the second you. Yi Qian raised his eyebrows and smiled. That will only work if I can beat him. If I can't train with him. He can only train with me. You can win, he said firmly. In response, Yi Qian's smile deepened. You can also win the fixed targets and the human body part targets. He always trusted her so much. How could she disappoint him when he trusted her so much? For the goal I want to achieve, I will work hard. I'm starting to wonder if I agreed too quickly. I should have raised the difficulty a little before I agreed. Her smile made Xia Jinyuan smile as well. The person he loved was by his side, fighting side by side with him. This was the happiest thing for him. The two of them had a tacit understanding. Xia Jinyuan's gaze softened slightly. Yi Qian, who had already sensed it, couldn't help but chuckle and look away naturally. Soldier number 3, who had been standing next to Yi Qian, didn't dare to speak after hearing their conversation. He secretly looked at Yi Qian with a complicated expression. Now, he was more and more convinced that Qing Niao's strength was not ordinary. She was so strong that she might be beyond their recognition. Before meeting her, he would never have imagined that a military school student could be so powerful that she could make a special forces soldier look at her with such respect. Instructor Pigeon was like this, and so was Instructor G3. When they spoke to Qing Niao, their expressions couldn't help but be respectful. He clenched his hands nervously, trying not to overthink. There was no point in overthinking, so he had to do what he had to do. Chapter 3277. When soldier number 2 stopped the car, Yi Qian and soldier number 3 jumped into the commuter car. The moment the door closed, Yi Qian said to soldier number 3, "Don't worry about me. Don't be distracted by me. Just focus on driving at the speed required by the competition. Leave everything else to me. Don't think too much. This is just a competition. It's also a way for me to blend in with you guys." Soldier number 3, who had his hands on the steering wheel, heard this and sighed softly. He nodded at Yi Qian with a serious expression. "Okay, leave the car to me. I'll leave the outside to you. Happy working with you. Happy working with you." The two of them high-fived each other and smiled. Yi Qian immediately checked the guns and ammunition used in the competition. During the competition in Estonia, she had made a mistake. She didn't check the bullets in the magazine. As a result, she couldn't shoot normally and almost messed up a major event. As long as she was a soldier for a day, she would remember this matter in her heart and would never dare to forget it. The flag was raised and lowered. Male soldier number 3 drove the car out calmly. At the same time, he began to step on the accelerator rhythmically. Just as they had agreed earlier, he focused on driving his car did not care about what was happening around him. Yi Qian had already aimed her rifle forward. The warrior commuter car was the same as the all-terrain vehicle. They were both convertible cars, and there was no cover around them. As soon as the target appeared in front of them, the soldiers in the car could immediately open fire. Soldier number 3 calmed down after he started the car. They were all elite soldiers with excellent overall qualities. It was impossible for them to make a low-level mistake. The target had appeared. Yi Qian didn't aim ahead of time like the other soldiers. She fired from the car. The car was constantly moving, so it was impossible to aim ahead of time. For Yi Qian, she didn't need to aim ahead of time. When the target appeared in front of them, she had memorized the terrain of the entire training ground from her morning training. Once the target appeared, she could immediately determine where the car was and where it was most suitable to shoot. Therefore, when soldier number 3 heard the first gunshot, he didn't even see Yi Qian aiming and had already fired the first bullet. After a sharp turn, 2 chest targets appeared consecutively on the left side. Yi Qian, who was already in the zone, raised his rifle and fired continuously as the car made a sharp turn to the right. Boom! The car made a sharp turn and made another reverse turn. 2 targets appeared at the same time. This required the reaction of the gunman on the car. If his reaction was slightly slower, one of the 2 targets would not be able to complete the shot. All the targets had been set up at the last minute. Yi Qian and soldier number 1 did not know about them, which made the competition even more difficult. When the targets suddenly appeared, even the driver was shocked. He shouted, "Over here! 2!" At the same time, he heard 2 gunshots. Yi Qian had turned around and was facing the rear of the car. The moment the car swerved, her body was thrown into the air. Within a few seconds, she had fired her 4th and 5th bullets consecutively. "Don't worry about me. I'll take care of it." After finishing his shot, Yi Qian immediately turned around and moved forward again while reminding number 3. If the car didn't maintain its speed, it would be useless even if she hit the target. Soldier number 3 was so shocked that his back was covered in cold sweat. He couldn't help but gulp. His voice was intermittent as the wind blew against him. "Did you hit it? Did you hit it?" He was extremely nervous as he asked. Yi Qian, who was observing the front, smiled and said, "Yes, I hit it." Chapter 3278. When the number 3 recruit heard Yi Qian say the word hit, his heart that had jumped to his throat slowly calmed down. It was too dangerous just now. He didn't think that there would be 2 targets when he turned the corner. If he didn't pay attention, he would have missed the target. Once he missed the target, no matter how fast Qing Niao was behind him or how high the points of each target were, with brother number 1's shooting skills, Qing Niao would lose without a doubt. When it came to cooperation, the number 3 recruit didn't want Yi Qian to be the loser. The speed at which I turned the corner was a bit too slow. While I turned the corner, I controlled the speed to be above the set speed. The number 3 recruit sought victory through stability and did his best to not make any mistakes. Yi Qian, who was paying attention to the surroundings, shook his head and smiled. "No need. I'll leave the driving to you and the shooting to me. Let's cooperate. 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 Don't worry too much." The car rushed up a steep slope, and a target appeared on the left side of a small hill. Yi Qian narrowed his eyes slightly. The target was far away. The rifle in her hand could be used all day. Without a low-light scope, the Type 95 had a shooting range of 375 meters and an effective shooting range of 400 meters. Within 200 meters, she could shoot directly. The car was extremely fast. The original distance of 400 meters was instantly shortened. The car rushed from the bottom of the steep slope to the top of the steep slope. Seeing that the car was about to reach the bottom of the steep slope, Yi Qian calmly opened fire without any sense of nervousness. The car rushed to the top of the slope and was exactly 200 meters away from the target. Moreover, it wasn't calculated from the front of the car, but from the driver's seat. Yi Qian calculated the distance extremely accurately. Even if there was an error, it would still be within her effective shooting range. The sound of a gunshot rang in his ears. Only then did the number 3 recruit realize that a target had appeared on his left side. This gunshot let the number 3 recruit know that he only needed to drive his car well. He didn't need to worry about Qing Niao. She alone had enough strength to complete this individual shooting competition. 100 rounds were all fired. This meant that there were a total of 100 targets. From the starting point to the end of the training ground was a total of 10 kilometers. In the middle, they would pass through 2 mountains and then make a big turn back to the original path. The Qing female soldiers had to find all 100 targets in this snow-covered training ground and complete the shooting. The Snowfield Brigade's Special Combat Vehicle Training Grounds covered a rather large area. The 10-kilometer training track was only for one person, and there were a total of 4 training tracks in the entire venue. The route that Yi Qian and the others were currently competing on was not the complicated 3rd training track. The most complicated one was the mountain training track that Yi Qian and the other male soldiers had competed on yesterday. Yi Qian, who had been shooting all the way, felt that Xia Jinyuan had been merciful to the male soldiers. If she had been the one competing with the veterans, he would have definitely changed the track to the most difficult route on the mountain and let them drive through the dense forest to find target. Before they were even halfway through, the rifle that had a capacity of 30 bullets was already down to 26. When the last bullet was fired by the firing pin, the moment the bullet left the cartridge and squeezed into the chamber, Yi Qian had already finished changing the magazine. At the same time, the first bullet from a new magazine hit another target. Male soldier number 3, who was focused on driving, did not notice how many targets Yi Qian had hit or how many bullets she had fired. Just like Yi Qian had said, he focused on driving his car and ignored everything else. He let Yi Qian handle everything by herself. Chapter 32:79. However, when he heard the sound of the magazine being changed and the first bullet being fired from the new magazine, even though he was not paying attention to Yi Qian, his expression changed drastically. What kind of situation was the magazine being changed? Of course, the magazine would only be changed when there were no more bullets left in the magazine. Normally, changing a magazine would involve a series of actions, which meant that there would be a pause between the changing of the magazine and the firing of the first bullet from the new magazine. But Qing Miao did not do that. From the time she changed the magazine to the firing of the first bullet from the new magazine, there was no pause at all. Sitting next to her, he did not even see her pause to change the magazine. She was changing the magazine with one hand, but she was even faster than that. From the time she changed the magazine to the firing of the first bullet from the new magazine, it was so fast that it was unbelievable. How'd she do it? How'd she do it? Question after question popped up in the mind of the 3rd male soldier who was driving, but because he was still driving to accompany Yi Qian in the competition, he had no choice but to suppress these questions. He thought that brother number 1 was already fast enough, but he did not expect Qing Yao to be even faster than him. She was so fast that it was unbelievable and inexplicable. She had finished changing the magazine the moment the last bullet was fired from the old magazine. How did she do that? At this moment, the 3rd male soldier already had a vague idea of who would win and who would lose in the end. At this point, the difference in strength was already clear. Brother number 1, you're on your own now. When the pride they were so proud of was broken one by one, it was time for them to recognize the truth. They had to get rid of the pride they once had. This pride was no longer their halo, but a shackle that stopped them from moving forward. If they did not get rid of it, it would become a barrier that blocked them from moving forward. It would become the source of their defeat because of their pride. Now that you're here, I don't care what your previous position was, how high your military rank was, or how many military achievements you've earned. When you're here, you're just a new recruit who has to start from scratch. Until today, when Qing Miao appeared and saw her display of strength, he finally understood why they were so unconvinced on the first day they entered the Snowfield Brigade. What right did they have to be unconvinced? What right did he have to be unconvinced? Every word of the veteran's advice was sincere. It was just that they were blinded by one leaf. Yi Qian still did not know that his match had caused soldier number 3 to be so emotional. The closer they got to the end, the more concentrated the targets were, and the more concentrated the shots were. He had used 34 bullets in the first 5 kilometers, and in the last 5 kilometers, the more concentrated the targets were, the more concentrated the shots were. If he was even a little bit distracted, it was very likely that he would miss not just one target, but two or three. Bang, bang, bang. Bang, bang, bang. Bang. In the spacious training ground, the sound of gunfire was like thunder. When the gunfire was concentrated, it even gave rise to a sense of terror. Only soldiers would not be afraid of hearing the sound of guns with great lethality. Only soldiers would not retreat no matter how loud the gunshots were in front of them. No matter how dense the bullets were, for the country behind them and the lights behind them, they would not retreat and resolutely advance. Yi Qian focused all her attention on the targets around her. Her vision was as sharp as an arrow. She focused all her attention on her target. As the car jolted, she maintained the stability of the rifle in her hand. She started shooting from a starting point all the way to the end. Chapter 3280. As for male soldier number 3, the closer he got to the end, the more focused he became. During the first half of the journey, he would occasionally glance at the female soldier beside him from the corner of his eyes to see if she was panicking or if she needed any help. But as the gunshots became more and more frequent, the female soldier beside him maintained the calmness she had when she set off. There was no sign of panic on her face at all. She even reminded him to be careful and finished shooting at the target. At that time, her expression was like that of a soldier who had experienced hundreds of battles, protecting herself and her comrades. He and Qing Miao had never worked together before, nor had they ever trained together. The two of them had only known each other for less than 24 hours. He couldn't feel any sense of security or trust from her at all. However, during this short period of working together, he suddenly felt a sense of security and trust. It was amazing. He didn't even know how strong she was, but he actually felt a sense of security from her. She didn't even know if he knew how to drive or if he could cooperate with her, but she actually believed that he could do it. After the last bullet was fired and the last target was hit, Yi Qian put away her rifle and took a deep breath. Her face that was red from the cold wind had a warm smile on it. She turned her head and said to male soldier number 3, "Happy working with you." Before they set off, her "happy working with you" contained encouragement and trust. After it was over, her "happy working with you" was happiness and recognition. With just one sentence, male soldier number 3 could tell the difference between the two. Male soldier number 3 also let out a long sigh of relief when he saw this. This time, he took the initiative to reach out his hand and smiled at the female soldier beside him. "Happy working with you, Qing Yao." Their palms quickly hit each other in the car. Male soldier number 3, who was controlling the steering wheel with one hand, laughed even louder. There was a female soldier in the male troop, and she was as beautiful as a flower. He was stunned by the sight of a female soldier. His days seemed to be quite beautiful. The car turned around and headed back to the starting point. At the starting point, all the male soldiers were waiting for Qing Yao to come back. From time to time, they would look in front to see if the car had appeared. Male soldier number 1 was also waiting. He was still waiting to see the results of both sides. His results were already out, and he was only waiting for Greenbird's results to be collected before announcing them together. Just now, when he saw the team leader's results, he wanted to see some clues from his face to try to guess whether his results were good or bad. Unfortunately, the expressionless team leader glanced at the results, and that overly handsome face was still expressionless. Now, it was up to Qing Yao's results. He was still confident that he could beat Qing Yao. While waiting, the male soldier number 1 clenched his fists. As long as he could beat Greenbird in shooting, he would be more confident in the following competition. Xia Jinyuan looked at the time. Seeing that the male soldiers were looking forward from time to time, he stepped forward and stood in front of them. As soon as he stood at the front, all the male soldiers straightened their backs naturally. Their facial expressions quickly changed into solemn and cold expressions. They looked straight ahead, not dodging or evading. They stood tall and straight, exuding the majesty of a soldier. Qing Yao hasn't come back yet. I think everyone is tired of standing. Why don't we guess who will win? Recruit number 1 or Qing Yao? Xia Jinyuan, who was standing in front, became the least serious person. He smiled and said, "What do you think the probability of Qing Yao winning is?" "What is the probability of recruit number 1 winning. Other than male soldier number 1, the other 28 male soldiers all leaned towards their brother. After all, they didn't know Qing Yao well, so it was hard to say. Chapter 3281. Seeing that they were all silent, Xia Jinyuan lets soldier number 1 speak. Soldier number 1, who was confident in his abilities, answered Xia Jinyuan, "I believe I can win." "Not bad. You're very confident." His sonorous answer made Xia Jinyuan smile. If a soldier didn't have confidence in his own abilities, he wouldn't be a good soldier. He then asked the soldiers who would win. Soldier number 2 shouted, "I choose number 1. He suddenly answered first, and the rest of his comrades were silent for less than 3 seconds before answering Xia Jinyuan in unison. Number 1 can win. Among the dozens of voices, none of them chose Qing Yao. Even though Qing Yao was slightly better than soldier number 1 in training, they still chose soldier number 1. They had seen soldier number 1's abilities, so they were more inclined to believe that he would win. Faced with their choice, Xia Jinyuan smiled meaningfully. "I choose Qing Yao. Qing Yao will win soldier number 1. If you lose..." Pausing, Lung Rui's eyes slowly swept across the male soldiers. The short pause made all the male soldiers feel alarmed. An ominous premonition rose in their hearts. If they lose, they would definitely be miserable. The winter training of the various units has already started. The winter training of the veterans has even ended. As for you guys, it seems like all of you are like young ladies raised in a boudoir. The only thing missing is embroidery. How about this? I'll leave the right to choose and decide for you. You guys decide which side should be punished. It must be related to the winter training. The higher-ups are still waiting for me to submit a report on your winter training. So far, you guys haven't had any training that I can write a decent report on. Leave the decision to them. The male soldiers who were frightened by Xia Jinyuan's pause were suddenly happy. They felt as happy as slaves who had turned over a new leaf. If it was related to the winter training, it was easy. Someone shouted, "The loser will go cross-country with heavy equipment." This must be related to the winter training. Xia Jinyuan nodded and answered with a smile, "It is related. Captain, I want to ask what the veterans have completed during the winter training. Do you have any heavy equipment for cross-country?" This question was obviously a trap. Colonel Xia, who had always been good at setting traps for others, wasn't afraid at all. He pretended not to notice and nodded. "Of course there are, but they just finished." Before he could finish, someone guessed what he was going to say and interrupted him with a laugh. "Captain, the right to choose is in our hands. Don't we have the final say?" "Yes, whatever you say." Colonel Xia, who was interrupted, revealed a helpless expression. He turned to the pigeons standing beside him and said, "Looks like you guys need to prepare as well. You've only been back for a few days, and you're starting again." This pigeon frowned as if he was in a dilemma. It seemed that he did not agree with the terms of the bet. "Why don't we change it? This is a little too harsh for a brother who has just completed a 100-kilometer cross-country with heavy equipment." I spoke too fast and gave them all the power. It was Xia Jinyuan's turn to look embarrassed. The male soldier, standing at the front, was overjoyed when he saw this. He immediately turned his head and began to discuss. Xia Jinyuan pulled Pigeon to the side and frowned as if he was also discussing something. Both of them turned their faces to the side, and the male soldiers who were observing them saw their facial expressions from the side. "Let's take our revenge. Hurry up, this is a rare opportunity." "Cross-country is fine too. I think cross-country is good. Brother number 1 is strong. There won't be a problem. Why don't we give them a 100-kilometer cross-country with heavy equipment? What do you think?" Chapter 3282. A low chuckle came from the group of male soldiers. When Pigeon, who was pulled aside, heard it, she sighed and said, "I'm starting to wonder if I should test their IQ. They actually fell into your trap. The simpler the trap, the easier it is for them to fall for it. Let's just watch." Colonel Xia, the captain of the Snowfield Brigade, was no longer in a dilemma and helplessness. His eyes turned cold and ruthless. "We've given them enough time." In the end, the condition of the bet was that the loser would have to cross 80 kilometers with heavy equipment. As soon as the male soldiers made the announcement, Pigeon pointed at them and said coldly, "You want to take revenge, right?" "No, no, no, sir. We're not taking revenge. This is the condition." The captain said it himself. We didn't say it. The captain said that it had to be related to the winter training and gave us the right to make the decision. We're just following orders. Hopefully, after the end of the competition, they will still be as confident as they are now. The pigeon gave the male soldiers a meaningful look and no longer argued. 80 kilometers of heavy equipment was feasible. 80 kilometers of heavy equipment is easy and simple. We'll set off this afternoon and finish tomorrow afternoon. Okay, we'll follow your arrangements. Xia Jinyuan agreed without hesitation. At the same time, he did not forget to persuade Pigeon. Calm down. It's only 80 kilometers. This is the bet. If Qing Yao really loses, I'll carry heavy equipment with you guys and cross 80 kilometers. It's fair and reasonable. I don't want them to make things unfair. His quick agreement made some of the male soldiers feel uneasy. However, when they thought of the strength of soldier number 1, they secretly suppressed their uneasiness. 80 kilometers of heavy equipment was easy and simple to say. Now that the snow had sealed off the mountains, one could be buried in the snow if they stepped on it. They also had to carry heavy equipment. If they set off this afternoon, they might not even be able to return tomorrow afternoon. It was a quick decision. Because it was the male soldier's own choice, no one stood out to question it. Everyone accepted it. Then, they heard Xia Jinyuan say, "If Qing Yao wins, I won't say anything else. You guys can figure out what to do by yourselves. In the future, you can rest assured that I will explain to you what fairness is and what unfair training is." Did you hear that clearly? You don't need me to repeat it, do you? Understood. How could they let Xia Jinyuan repeat it? Everyone held their heads high and answered loudly. Actually, regardless of whether they bet that Yi Qian would lose or that Yi Qian would win, they would still have to carry out the 80 kilometers of heavy equipment cross-country. It was just that they had brought it forward. Instead of keeping them in a strict formation, Xia Jinyuan gestured for them to move freely. The third male soldier drove the car and appeared in front of everyone with a Qing Yao. After a few minutes, they arrived at the starting point. Everyone couldn't help but look at the female soldier who was walking towards them. They saw a smile in the female soldier's eyes as she strode towards them. It seemed that he had done a good job at the target practice. Brother number 1 was so happy because he thought that he could beat him. They turned to look at the third male soldier and saw that he was also smiling. For a moment, the male soldiers couldn't figure out what was going on. The third male soldier had a good relationship with the first male soldier. When Qing Yao lost, he secretly smiled. They could understand that he was cheering for his brother. However, now that Qing Yao looked so confident, he also had a smile on his face. Who was he smiling for? Chapter 3283. When soldier number 3 walked closer, some of the other soldiers winked at him, trying to get to know him better. However, because Xia Jinyuan was standing in front of them, they didn't dare to be presumptuous. When soldier number 3 walked in his own class, someone asked softly, "How's the situation?" "We just made a bet with Captain." Soldier number 3 didn't wait for his comrade to finish speaking before his eyelids twitched fiercely. He quickly asked, "What did you bet on? Who would win between Qing Yao and number 1? "Yes, that's the bet. We all bet that number 1 would win. Everyone can see her strength." "Then let's wait." Soldier number 3 didn't say anything else. At this time, if he said we're definitely going to lose, it would put pressure on number 1, who still had to go through another round of the competition. He might as well not say anything and wait for the final result. "What do you mean?" "No. Tell us about Qing Yao's situation. Let's think about it and have a good idea. Why do I feel a little nervous when you say that?" Yes. Can't you reveal a little? You just walked over with a smile on your face and didn't say anything. I'm really nervous. We're going to lose an 80-kilometer armed off-road race. This is a small matter. It's not like we haven't done it before. The main thing is, Captain bet that Qing Yao will win. Once Qing Yao loses, he has to accept the bet. What we want is to accept the bet. Soldier number 3 looked at his comrades, then looked at Qing Yao, who was standing in front of the captain, and then at soldier number 1. When he looked away, he sighed softly in his heart. At this time, if he said that Qing Niao would definitely win, would it make his comrades, who were waiting for Captain to lead the veterans away, feel hopeless? I don't know if Qing Niao will win, and I don't know if number 1 will win either. The competition isn't over yet. We won't know who the winner is until the final result is out. In the end, soldier number 3 told his comrades in a slightly reserved manner. It was up to them to see if they could understand. If he didn't give an answer, the male soldiers who were waiting for Qing Niao to lose inevitably felt a little uneasy. Someone swallowed softly and uneasily looked at soldier number 1. Brother, it's up to you whether or not you'll be able to help us all. Stop guessing. Number 3 is right. Once the result is out, we'll know who the winner is. Let's go and watch the shooting. Line up, line up, line up. The 3 scattered classes immediately regrouped with the squad leaders and were led to the shooting range by the squad leaders. Yi Qian, who had arrived yesterday, did not have the chance to tour the training grounds properly. Now, Pigeon and Xia Jinyuan, who were heading to the shooting range, introduced the various training grounds to him. Although Yi Qian had not toured the base, he had a rough idea of what was going on based on the information on the computer last night. However, looking at information and seeing the actual thing were 2 completely different concepts. The training grounds of the Snowfield Brigade base were all very large, and there was more than enough space for an entire regiment to train here. The larger the training grounds, the more they had to learn. The more they had to learn, the more responsibility and danger they had to bear. Yi Qian, who was not nervous at all about the competition, asked Pigeon softly, "What about fighter jets? Do we have fighter jets in the base? If you know how to fly a fighter jet, you'll need to fly a fighter jet for training. Otherwise, how could he fly a fighter jet into the sky?" She still remembered Captain Xia telling her that when she was training in the depths of the desert that year, he flew a fighter jet over the desert and trained there for nearly 2 months. Chapter 3284. Pigeon couldn't answer this question in detail. Seeing Xia Jinyuan and G3 walking a few steps ahead and whispering to each other, he smiled and said softly, "There are no fighter jets here. Someone in our team knows how to fly a fighter jet, but flying a fighter jet is the job of the Air Force. Although we are a 3-way force, it's not easy to learn how to fly a fighter jet. We have helicopters to assist in combat. We know how to fly helicopters, but it's safer for the fighter jet to be flown by an Air Force pilot. Piloting a fighter needs to go through very complicated training, starting from the theory classes to the beginner trainer aircraft, to the intermediate and advanced trainer aircraft, and then to the actual fighter aircraft. The entire training cycle takes 3 to 4 years to become a qualified fighter pilot. And we belong to the Army Special Forces, so we don't have that much time to become a fighter jet pilot. The fighter jet you're talking about is something like a helicopter, right? We do have that, but after joining the team, we need to learn systematically. There was a huge difference between a fighter jet and a helicopter. But Yi Qian confirmed that Xia Jinyuan had indeed told her that he had flown over the desert in a fighter jet during her training. She also remembered hearing the boom-boom sound of fighter jet flying over the desert during that period of time. At that time, she didn't know that it was the sound of a fighter jet and thought that it was a different sound from other civil aircraft. It wasn't until he brought it up that she realized that it was a fighter jet that was different from the boom-boom sound of civil aircraft. Captain Xia would never lie to her. Could it be that Pigeon and the others didn't know that Captain Xia knew how to fly a fighter jet? So we don't need to fly a fighter jet? Yi Qian asked again. Ha. You need to ask the captain this question. Our team doesn't need to fly a fighter jet. Pigeon blinked at Yi Qian. After asking for a long time, he didn't answer Yi Qian's initial question at all. Then, did Lieutenant Colonel Xia know how to fly a fighter jet? Before the competition, Yi Qian still asked Xia Jinyuan this question. Lieutenant Colonel Xia replied, "I'll tell you if I know how to fly a fighter jet after I've beaten them all to the ground." Yi Qian didn't ask any more questions. Even though she didn't get a clear answer, Yi Qian still trusted Xia Jinyuan more. He said that he would fly a fighter jet over the desert, and that as long as she beat all 30 soldiers, he would let her fly a fighter jet. She believed him. The morning sun's rays of his son's body to warm them. Xia Jinyuan arrived at the shooting range and stood at the front of the formation with a rifle in his hand. His gaze to Yi Qian and soldier number 1 coldly. His lips curled a smile as he said slowly, "I just saw the results of the two of them. Both of them are pretty good. I'm very satisfied. I was thinking that if the two of them were able to achieve good results in such an intense competition, there was really no way to determine who was better. So, do you two want to give it a try? To try to. It was obvious that he was trying to goad them, but it was very effective. Soldier number 1 stepped forward and answered loudly, "I agree. Good." Xia Jinyuan was very satisfied. He shouted, "You're a hot-blooded man. No wonder you're a top soldier from the army." Chapter 3285. The male soldiers in the formation who couldn't move were also cheering in their hearts. Some of the male soldiers even had smiles in their eyes. The elite soldiers who came out of the army were not cowards. Xia Jinyuan's gaze fell on Yi Qian. Yi Qian walked out and replied in a clear and powerful voice, "I agree." He wasn't as hot-blooded as soldier number 1, but he still had the qualities of a soldier. "Looks like both of you are very confident in yourselves. Both of you dare to challenge the new difficulty. Good, as expected of elite soldiers with excellent qualities." The earlier matches were already so intense. It's meaningless to just aim and shoot at this point. If you ask me, you won't be able to fully display your individual strength. Only by adding some more surprises can the following matches be more exciting and exciting. Don't you think so? Not only did he have to bring out the hot-bloodedness of the two competitors, but he also had to bring out the hot-bloodedness of all the male soldiers. As the captain, Xia Jinyuan knew how to bring out the atmosphere. As long as he opened his mouth, the entire atmosphere of the training ground changed. A wave of thunderous "good" resounded throughout the training ground. The group of young soldiers roared until the veins on their necks bulged. This was the army. This was the military camp. There was a group of hot-blooded soldiers who were not afraid of sacrifice and could endure hardships and hardships. They were hot-blooded, responsible, and had the courage to challenge themselves. Xia Jinyuan actually thought highly of them. If he didn't think highly of them, he wouldn't have chosen them and wouldn't have spent so much effort to train them. The requirements aren't difficult. Both of you have to stand and raise your guns for an hour. After an hour, you can start shooting. At the same time, I will tell you the second rule during the shooting. This rule must be said during the shooting. I need to test your reaction speed and stability. I have no problem. Soldier number 1 nodded. At this point, even if there was a higher difficulty, he would accept and challenge it. After he finished speaking, his gaze fell on the female soldier standing beside him. He smiled and asked, "Qing Miao, do you have any problems?" He took the initiative to issue a challenge with a hint of provocation. This was normal in the army. It was the only way to incite the hot-bloodedness of every soldier and allow them to improve rapidly. Yi Qian met his gaze. "I want to add a little more. Is that okay?" "As long as Captain agrees, I have no objections," soldier number 1 replied. Yi Qian looked at Xia Jinyuan. "Captain, since we have to stand and hold a gun for an hour, why don't we add weights on the wrists? I suggest that helmet's wrists and put 5 fully loaded magazines. After an hour, we can finish shooting." The male soldiers in the formation all blinked their eyes. This was ruthless enough. The rifle in her hand was already heavy enough. If she had to put more weight on her wrist, the female soldier, could she really do it? Or even if she couldn't, she intended. How could Xia Jinyuan not agree to such a request? He had to agree. Soldier number 1, TSS. On the training ground, the other comrades were also training with their guns. The two of them stood motionless in the snow and raised their guns until the hour was over. Standing still for an hour without doing anything was boring and unbearable. However, for two soldiers with excellent shooting skills, it wasn't difficult. They just had to keep their minds calm. For Yi Qian, even an extra hour was fine. Chapter 3286. Soldier number 1's outstanding performance today was also inseparable from his own hard work and training. He had also undergone the same training when his wrist was suspended for an hour. Just as the two of them stood in position and raised their guns, Xia Jinyuan took out 2 empty bullets from the wide pocket of his training uniform. Almost forgot about this. Raising the gun, suspending the weight, and standing the bullets. The 3 of them are perfect. The male soldiers and Yi Qian glanced at Xia Jinyuan, who was speaking, and understood each other's intentions. What did he mean by almost forgot? He clearly wanted to catch them off guard, and catch them off guard. The male soldiers' gazes and Yi Qian's half-smile made it clear that comrade Xia Jinyuan, who had never forgotten to place bullets on the gun barrels of the 2 soldiers, was exposed. He looked indifferent and even said calmly, waiting and almost forgetting, "The latter sounds better. Don't you think so? Huh, you're the boss. You can say whatever you want." However, the boss was the boss after all. He was extremely ruthless. When the gun barrel was loaded with bullets, it really had to be done so that the gun wouldn't move at all. Even a slight shake of the hand would cause the bullets to fall off the gun barrel. We have another rule. Whoever's bullet falls off the gun barrel, the timer will restart from 0. Therefore, both male and female soldiers have to be careful. Don't let the bullets fall off the gun barrel. Every soldier had experienced placing bullets on the gun barrel. However, it usually took about 10 to 20 minutes. Of course, there were also those who had experienced it for half an hour. Soldier number 1 was one of those who had experienced it for half an hour. Shooting for an hour, he had never tried it before. The special forces in the army had undergone this kind of training. However, he was not a special forces soldier, so some of the training was not that tough and harsh. However, at this point, he definitely would not back down. He watched as Xia Jinyuan slowly placed the bullets on the gun barrel in Yi Qian's hand. His gaze slowly moved along the gun barrel until his gaze landed on Yi Qian's face. He saw that the female soldier, Qing Niao's expression, was still the same as before. She was extremely calm in the face of another test, as if everything was under control. When your opponent was more calm and composed than you, it would inevitably increase your own psychological pressure. Soldier number 1, who wanted to test Yi Qian's ability, swallowed lightly. Through Qing Niao's expression, he knew that he had reached the point where he had to give it his all. He had indeed not tried placing bullets on the gun barrel for an hour. He usually took about 10 to 20 minutes for normal soldiers in the army. He would take 10 to 20 minutes for himself and remove the bullets at most 40 minutes. Today was the first test, was an hour. Qing Niao was a military academy student. Could it be that her training was based on the special forces training? However, soldier number 1 saw Yi Qian, whose back was facing him, briefly exchange a few words with Xia Jinyuan. Yi Qian said softly, "Q King, I'm a sniper. I've been training like this for countless years." He's not a sniper. If you do this now, it will make me feel like I have an unfair advantage. From the moment Yi Qian took out the bullets, he already knew what Yi Qian was going to do. Xia Jinyuan gently placed the bullets on the gun barrel and said, "There's no such thing as an unfair advantage. This competition is a competition of strength. Don't tell me you want to hide your strength." Chapter 3287. There's no need for that. What I want is for them to know how big the gap is between a top soldier from a military academy and a top soldier from a military academy. I want to smooth out all their edges and corners so that their sharp edges will only face the enemy and not me, the captain. The young lieutenant colonel's eyes were clear and sharp, revealing the ferocity of someone who had just returned from a blood-soaked battlefield. His handsome features still had a slight smile on them. Even the young male soldiers who were looking at him didn't know what he was thinking. After the bullet was loaded, Xia Jinyuan didn't say anything more to Yi Qian. He turned around and walked to the male soldier number 1. He gently loaded the bullet and said to him, "I've seen your results when you were in the army. Your record of 40 minutes is only 10 minutes faster than the average soldier. Your family had spoken to your superiors and didn't want you to go to dangerous places. You weren't even allowed to join the special forces in your military region. When we were recruiting, I knew that you were acting on impulse and deliberately going against your family. Who knew that you were so lucky and strong that you actually managed to get into the Snowfield Brigade? Your family was quite anxious and wanted to intervene halfway to take you back. Unfortunately, they were one step too late. All the information and transfer orders were directly issued by the military. Your father even specially went to the army to scold you and even wanted to apply for disability. He didn't know what kind of unit you were going to join, but he knew that a unit that required such strict selection couldn't be a security unit. I never force people to stay. If you really think that you're not suitable for this place, you can pack up and leave after the competition with Qing Yao. Xia Jinyuan put the bullet away and said what he needed to say. When Xia Jinyuan got up, he heard the male soldier gritting his teeth and saying, "Captain, did you turn my family upside down? Don't worry. Since I'm here, I have no intention of leaving. I'm competing with Qing Yao today because I want to test her strength. I also want to let my brothers know how strong she is so that they won't be defeated by her in the next few days." Faced with the male soldier's teeth grinding, Xia Jinyuan smiled and replied, "Don't think too much. Focus on the competition." Damn it. After saying so much, he without telling him not to think too much. No wonder even the veterans said that their captain was the most cunning in the entire team. In the end, the competition was more important, so soldier number one didn't think too much about it. Time ticked by, and the winter sun was getting warmer and warmer. The young soldiers who were training hard on the training ground were already covered in mud as they rolled around in the snow. No one deliberately observed the two motionless figures standing in front of them. They did not move. From the beginning until now, the two of them had maintained their standing posture with their guns raised. Even the empty cartridges standing on the barrels did not fall out. 10 minutes passed, 20 minutes passed, 30 minutes passed, 30 minutes left. After a while, someone reminded him, 25 minutes left. After a while, it was still the same reminder. 20 minutes left. Then it came again. 15 minutes left. In the last 30 minutes, the same person used the same tone to remind the two people who were standing and holding their guns every 5 minutes. It sounded like a kind reminder, but it wasn't. This kind of reminder was really not good. It would make people more and more distracted, make them feel that time was more and more difficult to pass, make them feel that the gun in their hands was getting heavier and heavier, and make them feel that they might not be able to hold on. Chapter 3288. The warm sun in winter made the temperature rise to -5 degrees Celsius during the day. As Xia Jinyuan kept reminding him of the time, sweat dripped down from the forehead of soldier number one. He wanted to shout at Xia Jinyuan to shut him up, but if he did, the bullet at the top of the barrel would fall, and his time would have to start from the beginning. "I can't move. I can't move. I can't move." In his heart, soldier number one kept reminding himself to relax his grip on the gun and to not strain his muscles too much to avoid muscle cramps. However, the more he tried to do so, the more unstable his state of mind became. At this moment, Xia Jinyuan wasn't counting every 5 minutes, but every 3 minutes. 12 minutes left. Soldier number one, can you still hold on? If you can't, you can choose to rest. There's no need to force yourself. You can put down the gun or move your arms. You can do whatever you want. Both of them were using psychological disruption tactics. Soldier number one's state of mind was already wavering. Under Xia Jinyuan's strong psychological disruption, more and more sweat appeared on his forehead. The more he tried to focus, the harder it was for him to do so. He was a little anxious, but in order to be able to persevere until the end, he had been suppressing it and controlling his leaden arms. He had been holding the gun for 49 minutes. Jingxin, don't listen to him. Yi Jian, who was facing Xia Jinyuan's back, didn't know what was going on with the male soldier, but she could hear a hint of coldness in Xia Jinyuan's voice that was full of malice. This hint of coldness was obviously directed at soldier number one. He must have been annoyed by Xia Jinyuan's successful disruption. Under any circumstances, how could a soldier be disrupted by a few words? No wonder his voice was cold. Yi Qian, whose chin was pressed against the gun, kept the gun steady. She reminded soldier number one in a voice that was neither loud nor soft. As for whether he heard her, she didn't know. 9 minutes left, soldier number one had held on for 51 minutes, which was 10 minutes more than his previous maximum of 40 minutes. To him, this was considered an improvement. Perhaps it was because he had heard Yi Qian's reminder, Or perhaps it was because he knew that time was running out and victory was getting closer and closer. Even though sweat was dripping into his eyes, he did not move. Xia Jinyuan stared at the shutter and focused his attention on a single point. Slowly, he regained his focus. Finally, he said in a deep voice, "Shoot." He pulled the bolt and released the safety. At that moment, there was a clear click sound, followed by the sound of the first gunshot with a bang. This was Yi Qian's first shot. Immediately after, a second gunshot rang out. It sounded like the first male soldier had fired at almost the same time. Complete multiple shots at the same hole. A total of 5 bullets. Amidst the gunshots, Xia Jinyuan mentioned another rule that would increase the difficulty of the game. Before this, he had already reminded the two of them that he would mention another rule that would increase the difficulty of the game. With this reminder, the two of them were prepared. Yi Qian steadied the rifle in his hand and continuously fired multiple shots at the same hole. Completing multiple shots at the same hole was easy to say, but it was definitely not easy. Moreover, the two of them had to hold their guns in a standing position for an hour. The difficulty was so high that it exceeded the understanding of the rookies who had come to watch the game. Soldier number 1's expression changed slightly. After hearing the order, he immediately adjusted his posture and finished shooting. Chapter 3289. After an hour of standing and holding the gun, his arm was sore and painful. He didn't have time to adjust it. After receiving the order to shoot, fortunately, he had been prepared beforehand, so he immediately finished shooting. When the order to increase the difficulty level was given, even if he was mentally prepared, he still needed to adjust his stiff arm. Just as he was adjusting his arm, a new round of gunshots came to his ears. The male soldiers saw the female soldier, Qing Niao, holding the gun in a standing position. After her wrist was suspended for an hour, she didn't even need to adjust her arm. Her arms were steady and flexible as she fired the second bullet. Her actions made some of the male soldiers gasp. In this situation, if it were them, they would have to adjust their arm first before firing the second bullet. But she really didn't. Bang! 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 Dense gunshots rang out. In the end, there was only a bang sound. All the male soldiers' eyes fell on the male soldier number 1 who had fired the last bullet. In a second, they saw with their own eyes that their brother had fired the last shot. They saw with their own eyes that he was behind Qing Niao by 2 bullets. He was actually behind by 2 bullets. They had always thought that he was very capable because they had really seen brother number 1 shoot faster and more accurately than the veterans. However, today, they saw another person who could shoot faster than brother number 1, and it was a female soldier from the military academy. Moreover, when she fired the gun, it seemed a little strange. They couldn't pinpoint exactly what was strange. It was just that after she aimed and fired the first bullet, under the vibration of the recoil, her shoulders and arms would more or less move a little. At this time, to complete multiple shots at the same hole, she would need to aim again. But they seemed to have found that Qing Niao didn't make any aiming movements. She didn't seem to make any aiming movements. Did you see it? Someone suddenly asked the question in his mind. I don't think I saw it just now. I don't think I saw it either. Did you see it? The male soldier who was asked thought about it and answered uncertainly. She seemed to be aiming. I'm not too sure. If she didn't make any aiming movements, it's impossible to hit multiple shots at the same hole. Then she lost. Her speed is 2 bullets faster than brother number 1. Do you think she still has time to complete the aiming movements? I don't think it's possible. Except for the first bullet, the last 4 bullets were so fast that they looked like continuous shots, not point shots. No, it's a single shot. It's just that it shoots very quickly. I don't think it's possible for someone to shoot quickly and aim properly. Off stage, the male soldiers started whispering among themselves because of Yi Qian's quick firing. Everyone had different thoughts, and even they couldn't tell if Yi Qian had aimed or not. 300-meter rifle moving, full chest target shooting. Full chest target shooting with a 50-meter pistol. With another order, the male soldiers who did not have time to think deeply about it had to change the topic. They turned all their attention to the next match and did not have time to discuss who had won just now. Perhaps there was no point in discussing this anymore. What male soldier number 1 could do, the female soldier Qing Niao could do it much faster. This already showed that her strength was not inferior to male soldier number 1. After the order was given, the two of them started to run. At this time, the male soldiers once again discovered that the explosive power of the female soldiers was no less than that of the male soldiers. The figure that rushed out was like a cheetah running on the vast prairie. That speed was so fast that it covered several meters in the blink of an eye. Chapter 3290. Yi Qian's reaction was too fast. She was so fast that some of the male soldiers had only turned their heads to say a few words to their comrades before she had already rushed out. Such a fast reaction made the hearts of the male soldiers skip a beat. Some of the male soldiers' eyes had already started to waver. Perhaps they had really underestimated the female soldier who had come over and won against them yesterday. Perhaps they had really underestimated her. She's fast in both sprinting and long-distance running. It's a bit difficult for brother number 1 to win. Who won when all the bullets hit the same hole? Don't be discouraged. The competition isn't over yet. Watch first, don't talk. Watch the competition, watch the competition. Don't talk so much. Number 3, tell us the truth. You're Qing Niao's driver. I don't believe that you don't know her results. Is it because of what? Because he knew that Qing Niao had already won against brother number 1, so he couldn't say it. Number 3, who was asked this question again, looked at his comrade. He saw the slender figure on the field with a gun raised and started to shoot. This figure had already shocked him countless times in less than 24 hours. At this point, he completely understood that the male soldiers, had really underestimated the female soldier. Gunshots started to sound. The competition entered a climax after the first shot was fired. You don't give way to me, I don't give way to you. They continued to shoot until they finished shooting. Number 3 stared at the female soldier who was shooting as he replied to his comrade. Qing Niao's shooting speed is very fast. Watch her carefully and you'll discover something even more shocking. What's so shocking? Watch carefully. Don't talk. Number 3 stared at her intently. He didn't get a good look when he was driving. Now that he didn't have to drive and could stand to the side to watch the competition, he had to get a good look. How did she manage to fire the last bullet of the old magazine and finish changing the new magazine? He really wanted to know how she was able to finish changing the old magazine so quickly. The male soldier who asked the question saw him staring at Qing Niao with a cold expression and didn't dare to be distracted. He didn't want to miss something that would shock him. For some reason, the female soldier Qing Niao always had a mysterious aura that made people unable to help but look at her. This kind of mystery made people want to explore and unearth it. Shooting at a distance of 300 meters didn't mean that you were shooting while walking. Instead, you were shooting tactically. The height of the target was different, so the shooting posture was different. Sometimes the target would suddenly appear from the side. These all required tactical shooting and, at the same time, extremely fast reaction time. The male soldiers watching a match only saw the two gunmen rolling, jumping, bending, kneeling, and crawling. Almost all of their tactical shooting skills were used. Number 3, who had been counting how many bullets Yi Qian had fired, suddenly clenched his fists and reminded his comrade beside him, "Watch closely. 25 bullets have arrived." The rifle magazine had a capacity of 30 bullets, but the rifles in their hands were only loaded with 28 bullets. Soon, it was time for the photon bullets to appear, which meant that it was time to change the magazine. When the 27th bullet arrived, Yi Qian had already pulled out a new magazine. When the 28th bullet entered the chamber, she had already started changing the magazine. When the 28th bullet was fired, the new magazine was completed. Chapter 3291. Soldier number 3's eyes lit up. At the same time, his breathing became more tense. Finally, she fired the first bullet from the new magazine. The first bullet hit the target. Holy sh**T. She fired straight away. She didn't even aim. Someone suddenly exclaimed. That was the biggest question in soldier number 3's mind. That's right. When he was driving, He vaguely noticed that Qing Yao didn't aim when she was changing magazines. How could she shoot accurately without aiming? She didn't aim? That's impossible. She really didn't. I've been observing Qing Yao. She really didn't aim, but she did shoot accurately. She hit the target. How did she do it without aiming? Those recruits who were paying attention to soldier number 1 missed Yi Qian's spectacular performance. When they heard the discussion, they were dumbfounded. They felt that those who said Qing Yao didn't aim but hit the target were talking nonsense. Don't talk nonsense. You're disturbing the morale of the troops. She must have aimed. Otherwise, how could she shoot? This is common sense, okay? Do you still need to teach it? It's because this is common sense, but she didn't. That's why I was shocked. If she had aimed, I wouldn't be shocked. She really didn't? She really didn't. Why would I lie to you? I'm not the only one who saw it. A few of our brothers saw it too. The people below were already in an uproar. If it wasn't for the strict rules, they would have gone crazy. No one expected something that didn't conform to common sense to happen. Yet, the female soldier Qing Yao did it. It was natural for them to be shocked. Pigeon looked at the recruits who were in disbelief because of Qing Yao's shooting. She revealed a smile that resembled Mona Lisa's. When they saw the green bird changing the magazine and firing, both the veterans and the recruits had the same expression. They all felt like they had seen a ghost and wondered if their eyes were playing tricks on them. Then there were countless people who said that they didn't see wrongly and that it was really like that. There was a series of shocked expressions that felt like everything was King magical. This time, they're going to cry. 80 kilometers of heavy equipment cross-country. Can they walk back in 2 days and 1 night? Pigeon looked at this group of recruits who thought they could take down their captain, but were actually led by the nose by their captain. When she thought of the heavy equipment cross-country, she felt an indescribable comfort in her heart. Cool. It felt great, both physically and mentally. Then, he said to Xia Jinyuan, they're in charge of cross-country this time. Should we send some veterans to keep an eye on them? No need. Let Qing Yao lead the team. I'm going to drag them to the border for a cross-country trip. Then, we'll participate in the exercise and let them follow us to take a look. I'm in charge of a sneak attack from both the red and blue teams. This is the first time I've participated in this kind of exercise. I'll let them see the world. The pigeon asked, which border do you plan to go to? Xia Jinyuan thought for a moment and said, let's go to the borderline. If we go to a more complicated place, I'm afraid they won't be able to come back. That's good too. Although they're all elite soldiers selected from various military regions, it will be troublesome if they really go to a more complicated border. Pigeon nodded in agreement. What they wanted was a group of elite special forces in the future. They didn't want them to die early. After completing the 300-meter forward shooting, they entered the 50-meter range of handgun shooting and human body target shooting. G3 had been staring the whole time. He picked up the loudspeaker, and the gravelly voice was amplified infinitely. Target shooting with human body parts. He kept shouting, which meant that he needed to shoot continuously. Chapter 3292. This was the final shooting competition, and the 2 competitors were giving it their all. The male soldiers watching the competition didn't say anything, and all of them were watching intently. Male soldier number 3 only stared at Yi Qian. He wanted to remember Yi Qian's every move. The human body target was selected to shoot. 5 bullets had to be fired in 10 seconds, and the target had to hit the target. It was much more difficult than the chest ring target. The biggest difference between the 2 targets was that the chest ring target was a direct hit, while the human body target could be captured alive after being injured. Shoulder joint, knee joint, leg, elbow, wrist. Shoot continuously. G3's voice was exceptionally cold. His voice was already gritty, and when he spat it out so coldly, the male soldiers watching the competition couldn't help but shiver. Yi Qian, who could shoot accurately at any target, swung the rifle in her hand behind her back. She coolly carried the rifle and nimbly pulled out the pistol at her waist. Switching between long and short guns required extremely fast judgment and accuracy. The moment Yi Qian pulled out the pistol from her waist, she aimed, measured the wind, and fired all in one go. She had a gun in her heart, and there was a human body target in front of her. When she pulled out the gun from her waist, the gun in her heart came to life. Bang, 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 bang. 5 bullets were fired consecutively in 15 seconds. When experts fought, time was measured in seconds. A difference of 1 second could mean the difference of life. On the battlefield, whoever fired quickly and accurately had a higher chance of survival. A step late, a second late, and you might fall because of this step, or even a second late. Male soldier number 1 didn't undergo intensive training for human body targets, but his shooting skills were there for all to see. Even without intensive training, after firing 5 bullets, he also finished shooting accurately. It was just that he was slightly later than Yi Qian. Being a little late was still too late, and it also meant that he lost. Putting away their guns, the two jogged back. The applause for their wonderful shooting had already started. At this point, the male soldiers all knew that brother number 1, whom they thought highly of, was 1 step slower than the female soldier Qing Yao. Every shot of Qing Yao was completed with astonishing reaction speed. This was a speed that none of them could match. Now, all that was left was to see the results. How were the results? Soldier number 1 sighed to Yi Qian. I feel like I've lost. I've definitely lost. The higher the speed, the higher the accuracy. Qing Yao wouldn't be so confident if she only had speed, but no accuracy. With speed and skill, he would lose without a doubt. After sighing, he smiled bitterly. Before I saw you practice shooting, I never thought that I would have a competition with you. After I saw it, I was a little unconvinced, so I challenged you in a hot-headed manner. As it turns out, I was too impulsive and self-righteous. However, I don't regret it. If I hadn't been so hot-headed, I wouldn't have realized that the qualifications that I was so proud of were so weak in front of a true expert. Lost. I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Before the results were out, he admitted defeat in front of Yi Qian. Yi Qian was stunned for a few seconds before replying. Your shooting speed is already faster than many people. The veterans should have told you that your shooting speed is faster than theirs, right? You have a chance to surpass me. You're just behind me for now. If you train with the veterans, you'll surpass me one day. Chapter 3293. Soldier number 1 stared at Yi Qian. His young face was firm, showing his stubbornness. You're my goal. I'll definitely surpass you. Okay, I'll be waiting, Yi Qian replied with a smile. I will work hard too. I won't wait for you to surpass me. When the final results came out, the male soldiers who knew what was going on felt bitter. They didn't need to be defeated by her within a week. She had used less than 2 days to defeat all of them. The first impression the female soldier Qing Yao left on the male soldiers was that she was as strong as a mountain and couldn't be shaken easily. The results weren't announced directly. Xia Jinyuan gave all 3 scores to soldier number 1 so that he could see for himself how big the gap was. When he handed the scores to soldier number 1, he said calmly, You have great potential. If you didn't choose to compete with Qing Yao, it wouldn't be a problem for you to get first place with your results. Unfortunately, you met a soldier who was stronger than you. She used her strength to tell you that no matter what your results were, there are still people who are stronger than you, and you can meet them at any time. Recruit, it's time for you to take responsibility for your actions. Soldier number 1 took the scores from Xia Jinyuan and looked at the results of the 3 competitions. His face was already burning with pain. His captain was right. He should take responsibility for his own arrogance. Qing Yao's results told him that past results and past glory only represented the past. It didn't represent the future. If he didn't work hard in the future, his past glory would slowly fade until it dimmed, and he would forever fall behind others. When the male soldiers saw their brothers take the scores, they lowered their eyes and smiled bitterly. There was no need to announce who won or lost. Their brothers already had the answer on their faces. The scores were 1 high and 1 low. It was obvious who won and who lost at a glance. The way they looked at Yi Qian became more and more complicated. The female soldier Qing came to their team. She really wasn't training with them. She was here to crush them. After fighting with the veterans in turns, she fought with the eagle, who was the best at close combat. Then, She ran over to them without taking a break and became their captain. Today, after training with them, she competed with brother number 1. Thinking about it carefully, Greenbird didn't even take a break when she arrived at the base, but she was still so powerful. She shocked them again and again. This kind of female soldier completely refreshed their understanding of female soldiers. The female soldiers were already so powerful. If the male soldiers did not work hard, they would really lose face. The male soldiers, who were in a complicated mood, restrained their expressions. The feeling of being beaten by the female soldiers was really not good. It was really too embarrassing. They even thought that they were very powerful. Powerful my ass. In front of Qing Yao, all of them were like weak chickens. No wonder the veterans didn't even look them in the eye. Heh, they still wanted to use guns on the battlefield? They were a burden to the veterans. In the end, the veterans had to risk their lives to collect their corpses. After looking at the scores, soldier number 1 put away the bitterness on his face. He looked firmly at the young captain standing in front of him and said with a solemn expression, "Captain, I was wrong." Standing in front of Xia Jinyuan, soldier number 1, who was qualified to be proud, finally felt his unwillingness disappear. He also finally understood why they had to let go of the past on the day they walked to the Shuiyu base. Clinging to the past was equivalent to being stagnant. It was equivalent to stifling one's strength. Chapter 3294. Compared to admitting your mistake verbally, I prefer to take action. Xia Jinyuan's expression was indifferent when he heard the recruit admit his mistake. There was no joy in his expression. The results are in your hands. You can choose whether to announce it or not. Return to the team. Yes, sir. Soldier number 1, who was holding the score sheet in his hand, saluted his captain respectfully and immediately returned to the team. Xia Jinyuan, who was standing in the middle of the team, glanced at the male soldiers who were waiting for the results to be announced. His cold voice pierced through the warm sun and pierced into everyone's hearts. Gather at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The 80-kilometer weight-bearing cross-country will begin. Recruits, prepare well. Your good days are about to begin. The male soldiers who were standing upright received the final confirmation, which was also the answer they had guessed in their hearts. Qing Yao won, and the male soldiers lost. It was that simple. After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, he handed the recruits over to the pigeons. He drove a commuter car and got in a G3. The two of them drove away with a boom sound. What needed to be taught had been taught, and the rest of the time was for self-reflection. Pigeon walked to the front unhurriedly, still holding the folder in her hand. She took out a few sheets of paper from it. Class leaders, come up to receive this week's training program. In the future, the weekly training program form will be issued to each class leader. The 3 class leaders stepped forward to receive the training program form. This week's training was divided into 4 major training programs: combat skills training, mobility skills training, infiltration skills training, and reconnaissance skills training. There were also detailed items under the 4 major training programs, which are divided into different time points. Starting from 5:30 in the morning, there was only an hour of rest at noon. Until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there was only another hour of rest. Every day, after watching the news broadcast, there would be night training. Yi Qian looked at the bedtime at 12 o'clock in the evening. The training program for this week was similar to the 4-year training plan that Principal Chun had drafted for her. Time was tight. It was better to go to the army. There were systematic and detailed arrangements for all aspects. Although the school also had physical training, it was still too easy for her to keep up with Captain Xia's training schedule. However, was this training program the same as the veterans? Reporting. When the pigeons who were waiting for the classes to finish watching heard a clear voice that was completely different from the man's, they did not even need to look for him. Instead, they looked straight at him. Asked, "Do we have the same training as the veterans?" Yi Qian asked. She wanted to have the same training as the veterans every day. Pigeon laughed. It's all basic training, so it's naturally different. In other words, the training for the veterans was even more demanding and difficult. All the major subjects of the training are the same as the major subjects of the veterans' weekly training. The difficulty of the subdivided subjects is not as high as the veterans. If you want to reach the same level of difficulty as the veterans, you're not there yet. As for Qing Niao, you can still train with the veterans, but the captain has ordered that you have to suffer first. The first part of the sentence was enough to make the male soldiers feel ashamed, but the last part of the sentence, Qing Niao has been wronged, made the male soldiers' faces flush red. Fortunately, everyone was the same, and no one could laugh at anyone. After Pigeon patiently answered Yi Qian, she continued, "Today's training will be compressed. You must complete the training before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Whether you can make it in time for lunch before the 80-kilometer weight-bearing cross-country training will depend on whether you can compress the training before 3 o'clock in the afternoon." Chapter 3295. Compressing the training before 3 p.m. to be completed before lunch. Yi Qian quickly recalled the training subjects he had just seen in his mind. It wasn't that he couldn't complete them, but he couldn't afford a rest for even half a second in the middle. If you don't complete the training mission, you will depart on an empty stomach. However, your results will be recorded every day. The Snowfield Brigade will not keep cowards. If your overall index does not meet our requirements, you will not be qualified to stay even if you are the strongest in your original unit. To put it nicely, we will send you back to your original unit. To put it bluntly, you are not qualified at all and cannot meet our requirements. In order to prevent you from being a burden to your comrades in the future, we can only kick you back to your original unit. This was an order and also a warning. Her words made the faces of the male soldiers who were originally prepared to go cross-country on an empty stomach if they didn't complete the training before lunch turn serious. This matter concerned the dignity of a soldier, so it had to be completed. Pigeon did not stay to watch the male soldiers train. After saying what she needed to say, she stepped on the all-terrain vehicle Xia Jinyuan had driven over and left. Yi Qian, who had beaten the male soldier, also had to continue training. She had only won this time, and not every time, so she naturally had to continue training. Shooting, obstacle course, and maneuvering skills had to be completed. If they couldn't complete them, they would have to start carrying weights for 80 kilometers on an empty stomach. In the face of such an order, who would have the time to ask soldier number 1 about the difference in their results? The 3 squad leaders shouted, and each led their respective teams to finish the day's training in half a day. No one questioned this arrangement again. What right did they have to question it? If they didn't even have the ability to stay, what right did they have to question it? This time, all the male soldiers managed to control their dissatisfaction very well. The doubts raised by people without ability were all F*** king bullsh** t. If you let someone with ability listen to your bullsh** t doubts, would they listen to you? If it were them, they wouldn't listen either. This was why the veterans directly ignored them when they submitted their reports, but Qing Niao could still get an answer when she submitted her reports. It was because Qing Niao had the ability to question everything they did. In a place where strength was the most important thing, other than strength, nothing else mattered. Now, they were really glad that ever since they joined the military, even though they were dissatisfied, they completed their training according to their instructor's orders every day. He didn't protest and refuse to train because he wasn't convinced, nor did he procrastinate and complete the training because he wasn't convinced. Fortunately, they were very serious and did their best to complete the training. Fortunately, they had been using their own strength to resist the training to show their dissatisfaction. Fortunately, it was not too late. Everything could still go on. Xia Jinyuan and the veterans had been able to tolerate the recruits until now because they thought they were okay in the hearts of the male soldiers. These proud and arrogant elite soldiers were indeed elite soldiers. When they acted recklessly, the veterans who were secretly observing them had to cheer for them. It was because of this that he wanted them to stay. He didn't want to let any of them go. It would be a pity if they were kicked back to their original units because they disobeyed orders. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack, but they only managed to fish out 30 people to the base. It took them 2 years to send one back. You should be relieved now. This group of male soldiers has already begun to put away their sharp edges and get used to the rules of our brigade. After returning to the office, G3 sat down in his spacious office chair. At the same time, he opened the form that Xia Jinyuan had rushed to make this morning. Chapter 3296. Slowly flipping through the pages, the smile on his face gradually deepened. Oh, this kid is not bad. He likes to do things quietly, and his overall results are all good. This kid is not bad either. He was a scout and was alone for a few days because of his previous profession. When he turned around and saw that the situation was not changing, he immediately turned around and looked for partners. I saw it and was happy for a few minutes. Q King, it seems that Boss Yang really put a lot of thought into choosing people for us this time. Although they're all thorns, their overall abilities are really good. Yesterday, Greenbird took down number 2. That kid isn't your average kind of strong. He was born in the Air Force, and he went into a company all by himself. He killed half of the people in the company like a ghost. Later, if he wasn't bitten by a poisonous snake and didn't have his serum on him, the entire company would have been destroyed by him. G3 had trained recruits before and had a good impression of them. He liked to see the recruits being despised by him and feeling helpless and secretly jumping up and down in anxiety. Xia Jinyuan glanced at G3, who was not polite at all when they entered his office. He pulled open a drawer of his desk, rummaged through it, and took out a piece of chewing gum that he didn't know when he put it there. He peeled off the paper and stuffed 2 pieces into his mouth. After chewing for a while, he answered, Boss Yang is choosing people. We'll go and choose people. If we can't accept them, then we're blind. They're all good people. They didn't have any major problems after being left to fend for themselves for a few months. Otherwise, you guys wouldn't have needed me to come back and would have thrown them out long ago. I'm thinking now, I have to let them see blood. If they haven't seen blood, something is missing. When he said this, his brows were tightly knitted, as if he was making a difficult decision. G3 saw that he was chewing gum a little fast. After being comrades for a few years, he knew that he was making a big decision in his heart, and this decision would have some problems. He sent them to the border for cross-country training. Actually, you've already made a decision in your heart? He asked. Xia Jinyuan shook his head and said in a low voice, No. When I saw their training results in the past few months, this thought flashed through my mind. What really made me decide was the deliberate provocation from those guys just now. He's not bad in all aspects, but he's still a little inexperienced and childish. They might be convinced now, but that's because Qing Niao showed up as a military academy student, and they knew that they were wrong. If Qing Niao showed up as a soldier today, they wouldn't immediately recognize their mistakes just because she's a female soldier. We have to make them recognize reality. Otherwise, they will always live in their own imagination. No matter how strong their comprehensive abilities are, they will still be eagles that have never left their nest and do not understand the dangers outside. We have to let them fly for a while. G3 fell silent and then asked him, How do you plan to meet blood? Real blood or fake blood? Real blood, Xia Jinyuan answered. Don't worry about letting them go. I'm worried. G3's eyes widened. You're worried and you're letting them go? Xia Jinyuan's eyes darkened. That's why I'm hesitating. They only had one life, and if they lost it, they would be F*King dead. I've read their reports, and almost all of them say that they want to go to a real battlefield. F*CK, what's a real battlefield like? Blood flows like a river, corpses are everywhere, bullets rain, and people are torn to pieces by artillery fire. This group of eagles that have never left their nest have never seen a real battlefield before, so they can't imagine what a real battlefield is like. Chapter 3297. It was rare for Xia Jinyuan to be hesitant. He was the captain of the Snowfield Brigade and the highest commander in the team. He had always been decisive and never hesitated. After being the captain for so many years, he had never hesitated even once. Even when it came to Yi Qian's life and death, he never hesitated. He had always made up his mind to complete it immediately. G3 pondered for a moment before replying. I'll let them see blood directly and know the depth of the water. However, in my eyes, their abilities can still be seen in actual combat exercises. If it's really time to see blood, they still have to practice. He flipped through their results again and frowned. Their results are okay. Their professional performance is not bad. If they really see blood, they can hide it. Xia Jinyuan entered the computer system with a mouse in his hand and pulled out the psychological quality evaluation form for male soldier number 2. I've seen the psychological quality evaluation of all 30 of them. They have all experienced torture and simulated interrogation as prisoners of war. This is the last stage. Which means that 16 top students were screened out at once, but they survived. If they really see blood, they can face it calmly. G3 had not seen the psychological quality evaluation of the recruits. Can I take a look? Take a look. Xia Jinyuan moved the computer over to G3. The psychological stress analysis of all 30 of them is inside. In the end, they all stayed because they passed the Major General's test. G3 moved the mouse over and slowly scrolled through the page to browse through the psychological stress analysis and evaluation of each person. The information was quite detailed. It started with the analysis of each person's expression and ended with the analysis of all aspects of their body functions during the torture. G3 did not finish reading all of it. Instead, he selected 5 people's information to read in detail. In the end, he sighed. No wonder these recruits are all so arrogant. Good fellas, they're very strong in both soft and hard ways. Yes, this is also why they didn't push themselves out no matter how hard they tried. They have a bottom line in their hearts and understand what they can and can't do. Xia Jinyuan turned the computer back to face him and stared at it for a few seconds. He said in a low voice, "It's still better to see some blood." G3 thought for a moment and nodded. This group of new recruits had gone through many tests and had finally become reserve members of the Snowfield Brigade. Seeing blood was indeed helpful to them. But seeing blood isn't something that can be seen just because you say so. You have to carry out a mission. Right now, our team hasn't received any mission from the higher-ups, even if we want to arrange for them. He kept looking at Xia Jinyuan as he spoke. As he spoke, he saw their captain, who had always been resourceful, reveal a meaningful smile. G3 suddenly had an epiphany and immediately understood what he meant by seeing blood. I understand, but we still have to report this matter to our Major General first. We can only do what we want if he agrees. Hearing this, Xia Jinyuan pointed at the landline and spat out the chewing gum in his mouth. He said to G3, "I'll talk to the Major General. You go away." Looking at the relaxed G3, Colonel Xia had to admit that he was a little jealous. He waved his hand to get G3, who had nothing to do, to quickly leave his sight. As long as the seeing blood plan passed, it was very likely that Qing Niao would be implicated. Thinking of this, Xia Jinyuan's heart could not help but feel a little heavy. G3 looked at him deeply and revealed a smile. Qing Niao was still training with the new recruits. Once the Major General agreed to the seeing blood plan, Qing Niao would be in danger. Chapter 3298. Xia Jinyuan put his right hand on the microphone and then took it back. He had to think about how to get Major General Yang to agree. He had to think about it carefully. After standing up and pacing around the office for a few minutes, Xia Jinyuan called Major General Yang, who was dealing with official business, with a hint of a smile in his eyes. As the Chinese New Year approached, Major General Yang, who had more and more work to do, heard Xia Jinyuan's arrangement. The first thing he scolded was, "Nonsense! Are you trying to stir up trouble during the Chinese New Year?" After listening to Xia Jinyuan's analysis, Major General Yang fell silent again, especially when he heard that the oldest person in the team was already 36 years old. "We can't delay any longer." Major General Yang suddenly understood why his young and capable general had made such an arrangement. In the end, it was because the Snowfield Brigade had too few special combat personnel. It was already difficult to ask for the best of the best, and it was even more difficult to ask them to be kings of individual combat. Major General Yang continued, "You can't be too hasty. Although they have been training in your team for a period of time and have met your requirements in all aspects, they have not been on a real battlefield after all. It's not easy to select these 30 people, and they're far less than the 50 people I expected to select. They haven't really come out yet. If something happens, a life will be lost. How about this? Give them another half a year. After half a year, the veterans will lead them to carry out missions. It's the Chinese New Year, and you will have a military exercise here soon. Postpone all the unimportant things and coordinate with the military exercise of the red and blue teams. This is also the first time you have participated in such a special military exercise. I hope you can complete this mission successfully. When it comes to bloodshed, you have to have a mission to do so. If it's really an urgent mission, only the veterans will be involved. They can't send out soldiers, so they can only be the eagles in the nest for the time being. Don't worry. Since I've selected them, I won't let them stay in the base forever. Half a year. Xiao Yuan, I'll give you half a year. After you train them into decent Special Forces soldiers, I'll consider letting you lead the team to see blood. When Xiao Yuan heard that Major General Yang's tone had softened, he raised his eyebrows and sighed as if he had been persuaded. You still agree to lead the team to see blood, right? You're just worried that they won't be able to come back, right? Nonsense. The reason I chose them was to go to the battlefield. If I don't let them see blood, why would I waste my time? Major General Yang laughed and scolded him back. Don't cause trouble for me. Did you hear me? We have to be on guard everywhere during the holidays. If you cause any more trouble for me, Xiao Yuan, I will personally skin you alive. Don't worry, I won't cause trouble for you. How about this? I've thought of another idea. What do you think of my idea? Xiao Yuan, who had been laying the groundwork for nearly 5 minutes, finally said his idea. After he finished speaking, Major General Yang's cursing voice could be heard from the other side of the phone. When he finally ended the call, Xiao Yuan had a deep smile on his face. It was done easily. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the 80-kilometer weight-bearing cross-country trip started from the base. With backpacks on their backs and rifles on their shoulders, the team began to head north. Qing Miao led the team into the depths of the forest. The Snowfield Brigade base was located somewhere in the north and was not far from scenic forest. They could enter the scenic area if they went any further, but tourists would not know that there was an unknown Special Forces team hidden in the depths of the forest. Chapter 3299. The snow in the mountains was even thicker than the snow in the base. Stepping on it felt like stepping on cotton balls. Their feet sank into the ground, and if they wanted to pull themselves out, they would have to use the trees around them to pull themselves out. Although it was called carrying weights, it was actually just carrying their luggage. They had to set off in the afternoon and return the next night. In between, they would have to spend a night in the forest with the snow, the mountains, and the beasts. They had to take good measures to protect themselves from the cold. Otherwise, if they woke up in the middle of the night, their bodies wouldn't be able to take it. Although the 80-kilometer armed off-road mission was caused by soldier number 1 losing to Yi Qian, no one blamed him for losing. Everyone knew that with Qing Miao's strength, even a veteran would lose to her. Just how strong was the female soldier Qing Miao? The male soldiers who were walking looked up at the slender figure walking at the front. They had been walking for a full 3 hours since they set off, and she had been walking at the front with her backpack the entire time. She didn't say a word about being tired, and walked along the Big Dipper map in a relaxed manner. Before they set off, the captain said that Qing Miao would be the person in charge of this armed off-road mission. He asked the male soldiers if they had any objections, and none of them raised any questions. Since the captain had chosen her, it meant that she had the ability. In a troop where strength spoke louder than words, strength represented everything. We're still 11 kilometers away from our campsite. We'll rest after we've covered 11 kilometers. In front of them, Yi Qian, who had reached a high point, held the Big Dipper map and said to the male soldiers at the foot of the mountain in a clear and melodious voice, 11 kilometers. We'll finish it in an hour and a half. How does that sound? The male soldiers at the foot of the mountain didn't see where she was, but when they heard her melodious voice, which was different from the male soldiers, They immediately replied, "No problem." There was another answer that was different from the others. "We'll finish it in an hour." How does that sound? As soon as he said that, countless F***K could be heard. It wouldn't be a problem to cover 5 kilometers in 16 or 17 minutes with light equipment, and it wouldn't be a problem to cover 10 kilometers in 34 or 35 minutes. But they were in the mountains now, and the snow was already up to their knees when they stepped on it. They had to use all their strength to pull their feet out of the snow before they could continue walking. Moreover, they were carrying 20 kilograms of weight. It was difficult to cover 11 kilometers in an hour in an armed off-road mission. Did this kid know how to calculate? Yi Jian's hearing was good. The male soldier's voice was loud and clear. It could be heard clearly in the silent valley. Hearing this, she smiled and said, "The veterans can easily do it in an hour. We still have to practice." Of course it's the truth. I don't like hearing lies. So it's normal to cover 11 kilometers in an hour. Why don't we challenge it? Yi Qian suggested. We have enough time to finish the 80 kilometers of armed off-road mission tomorrow. We can finish it in advance, or we can challenge it. Yi Qian actually had some doubts. Why did they give them so much time? They could have just squeezed the return time tight. Chapter 3300. Yi Qian didn't voice her doubts. The male soldiers wouldn't be able to answer her questions. Only Captain Xia, who had arranged for this 80-kilometer armed cross-country event, could answer her. The male soldiers agreed unanimously to complete the 11 kilometers challenge in 1 hour. After walking for 3 hours, they were stimulated by Yi Jian and felt energized again. They started a new journey. Let's go. Let's walk 11 kilometers in an hour. We have to grit our teeth and get through it. If the veterans can walk, so can we. Don't bring up the veterans in the future. In their eyes, we're still entry-level soldiers. We're not even at the beginner level. Hearing this, Yi Qian couldn't help but laugh. No, you guys are already at the beginner level. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been allowed to enter. Her tone became lower and more sincere. I heard that it wasn't easy for you guys to get in. You guys had to overcome many obstacles and go through many rounds of selection. You guys are quite impressive. Her words were very simple. There wasn't much praise, but her tone was low and sincere. Hearing that, the male soldiers felt warm and comfortable. Seeing that the female soldiers knew that they had been selected all the way, the corners of their mouths turned up in unison. The male soldier closest to Yi Qian was a little embarrassed. He replied, "It's nothing. At the time, we just felt that since the military had signed us up, if we didn't work hard, we wouldn't be able to live up to the expectations of our leaders. Most importantly, we felt that being eliminated would make us lose face. Most of the time, we just grit our teeth and got through it. To be able to stand out from so many outstanding soldiers, it's enough to show that you guys are very impressive." Yi Qian really thought so. She knew how difficult it was to get into the Snowfield Brigade. If the male soldiers didn't have the ability, they wouldn't be able to become reserve members. The male soldiers who were praised saw the sincerity in the female soldier's eyes and knew that she wasn't saying anything against her will. After being crushed by the female soldier time and time again, they heaved a sigh of relief. They were afraid that the female soldiers would look down on them, so they were a little timid in front of her. Now that they heard her say this, they knew that she truly acknowledged their strength. The heavy feeling in their chests slowly dissipated, and they looked at Yi Qian with much more sincerity. Yi Qian had won against the male soldiers several times in a row, and they were more or less embarrassed to face him. Now that they were praised by Yi Qian in a sincere tone, they could finally raise their heads a little. Yi Qian, who saw this, couldn't help but smile. Captain Xia had said that communication was the best way to close the gap between people. She hoped to be able to close the gap between her and the male soldiers through communication. She grabbed onto a tree and used the strength of her arm to pull herself up. She pulled out her leg that was stuck in the snow and walked forward step by step. The male soldiers behind her did the same and walked forward with firm steps. For soldiers, especially special forces soldiers like them who were in high-risk battles, strengthening their physical fitness was an important quality that they had to have. It was also a basic condition that could not be left behind. If their physical fitness couldn't keep up, their combat effectiveness would be greatly reduced. Since they had to complete 11 kilometers in an hour, the male soldiers who had walked for 3 hours saw the female soldier in front of them who didn't seem to be tired and started walking again. They all set their goal of surpassing Unyielding. Carrying their backpacks and rifles, they started to charge forward in the snow. When they reached the bottom of the slope, the group of 31 people worked together. They didn't walk all the way, but directly slid down to save time and energy. Chapter 33:01. Be careful. This area is covered with pine snow. Don't fall into it. Go this way, slide straight down. The two of them are starting to slide down. Brothers who are going down, help them. The two of them fell into the snow. Their nostrils are full of snow. Huh. Two male soldiers who had fallen into the snow with their nostrils full of snow said angrily, "If you guys hadn't pushed us from behind, we wouldn't have fallen into the snow." Their comrades laughed even louder. Unyielding, who was walking in front, couldn't help but laugh when he heard the laughter. The warm afternoon sun in the winter was beginning to retract its warmth. Although it was still shining, it was no longer as warm as before. The icicles hanging from the pine trees sparkled like crystals. They sparkled, bright and beautiful. The snowy scenery in the mountains was very beautiful. But no matter how beautiful it was, one would get tired of it if they stayed in the mountains every day. Especially when they walked into the mountains, there was only snow and trees. The colors were so monotonous that it was a little dull. The male soldiers who kept moving forward did not pay attention to the scenery around them. They only had one goal now, and they would not give up until they reached it. Unyielding heard the sound of snow creaking behind him. She quickened her pace. Although her military experience was younger than theirs and she was still a cadet, her actual training experience was longer than theirs. If she was worse than them, with a full 6 years of training, then she wouldn't be qualified to train with the Snowfield Brigade. With her hard work, the male soldiers quickly realized that Qing Yao's stamina was unusually strong. Sometimes they even needed to lean against a tree to rest for a while, but she didn't. After a few hours, they didn't see her lean against a tree to rest for a while before continuing to walk. She was just walking without a second of rest. Other than checking to see if Big Dipper had deviated from its route, she never stopped. In the beginning, the two male scouts were still able to keep up with Unyielding's footsteps. But gradually, the distance between them grew wider and wider. In the end, the two of them were dozens of meters behind Unyielding. It was like an uncrossable chasm. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't close the gap of dozens of meters. Catch up quickly. Catch up quickly. The last one is more than 600 meters behind Qing Yao. Give him a hand and lighten his load. Keep going. Don't worry about me. I will definitely make it. The last male soldier didn't let his comrade carry the heavy load for him. He was too slow and had already dragged his comrade down. He didn't want to trouble his comrade anymore. Ignore you and wait for you to come back. Give me the gun. Give me the backpack. You two help him walk. Once we pass this place, it will be easier. Let's all help. We've all come here together. At any time, they would never allow themselves to leave their comrades behind. They would always remember, never give up, never abandon. The camaraderie and tacit understanding between comrades in arms was cultivated from all kinds of training. You will always be my strong backing, and I will always be the guardian of your life. This was what it meant to be a comrade in arms. They would never give up and abandon each other. And Unyielding, who had pulled away from the male soldiers, didn't turn back. She couldn't turn back. She had to keep walking forward because she was now the target of all the male soldiers. As long as the male soldiers who had her as their target raised their heads and saw her moving forward, they would continue to chase after her and wouldn't let their guard down. 11 kilometers took an hour. She hoped they could complete it. Chapter 33:02. They went up and down the mountain, each pulling the other, leaving a trail of deep footprints behind them. The snow was very bright. Everyone wore goggles to prevent their eyes from being blinded by the light. They wore camouflage clothes that blended with the snow, and even wore white camouflage hats. An hour passed, and it was 5 o'clock. They were still 2 kilometers away from their campsite. In an hour, they had walked 9 kilometers. Their speed was not fast, but it was not slow either. The snow was too deep, and they had to go up and down the mountain. There was not a single flat path in sight. Sometimes, they had to explore the path themselves. Yi felt that walking 9 kilometers in an hour with 20 kilograms of weight was a good result. Yi did not continue forward. Instead, he stood in place and waited for the male soldiers to arrive. They walked from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock. They did not even have 5 minutes to rest. They kept moving forward, working hard towards their goal. They worked hard. Even if they did not achieve their goal, they did not have any regrets. "Give me the backpack." Yi, who was standing on top, used a rope to tie his waist. The other end of the rope was tied to a tree. He leaned down and used the strength of his waist to stabilize his body, freeing his hands to help his comrades. After receiving the backpack, Yi lifted it up forcefully and placed the backpack firmly in the snow. On the other side, the comrades who didn't carry any weight climbed up the slope with both hands and cooperated with Yi to pull the comrades behind them down one by one. The Qingling Mountains were very steep. The route they took was the 180-kilometer armed cross-country route that the veterans used in the winter. The entire route was steep. Although the mountain they were on was not high, it was so steep that it looked like it had been cut by a knife. It was very steep. Fortunately, they did not need to go up the mountain. They only needed to walk along the side of the mountain. If they wanted to go up the mountain, they would have to slide down 10 steps after 3 steps. Even if they walked along the side of the mountain, it was still very tiring. If they were not careful, they would be in danger of rolling down the mountain. "Qing Niao, you rest for a while. The rest of us will do it." After pulling in 5 male soldiers in a row, they didn't want Yi to work so hard anymore. They advised Yi to rest and let them take over. Yi waist, which had been tightly fastened in the air, did not persist. His waist was sore from going up and down. Next, 5 people came up in groups of 5, and then another group of 5 came up. In this way, everyone got some rest. 5 in a group. Take turns to pull them up. The ones in front rest, and the ones at the back help the comrades who need to come up. Yi ordered as she untied the rope around her waist. The temperature was 10 degrees below zero, and she was so hot that she was sweating. The male soldiers did not allow Yi to give any further instructions. They immediately carried out their orders. In less than 20 minutes, they finally managed to pull everyone down. They were already very, very close to the camp. All of the comrades who had climbed up sat in the snow. They looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. Yi sat in the middle. When she laughed, her eyebrows curved like a crescent moon. Her dark eyes were rippling. Unknowingly, she became the center of attention for the male soldiers. When they saw her laughing, the smiles in the eyes of the male soldiers deepened. From 1 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., the distance between them gradually closed. Although there was still some distance between them, there was already a sense of camaraderie that they had gone through thick and thin together. The sun set, and at the end of the mountain, the rays of the setting sun dyed the edges of the clouds with a thin layer of gold. It also shone on the snow like golden powder. After a short 5-minute break, Yi stood up. She waved her hand and said with a smile, "Let's go, let's go. Let's go down the mountain and rest well." Chapter 33:03. After a few hours of interaction, a brave male soldier even joked with Yi. He raised his voice and said, "Qing Niao, can you still run down the mountain?" "Ha! Do you want Qing Niao and her bag to roll down the mountain like a snowball? Actually, you could try running. If you can run, we and Qing Niao will run with you." On the other side of the mountain, several black shadows suddenly flitted past the pale golden sunset. They were like mountain spirits that walked through the mountains, disappearing with incredible agility. A forest musk deer scurried out of nowhere. Its hooves stomped on the shrubbery, and the rustling sound startled a few unknown birds that were looking for food. The startled birds immediately spread their wings and flew high into the air, leaving silhouettes in their wake as they streaked across the vast mountain range. They eventually disappeared into the mountains. Yiqian, who was using his binoculars to look ahead, happened to see the few birds that were flying over the mountain range about 500 meters away from them. The cold did not startle the birds. Only strange noises in the forest would startle the birds. There are forest musk deer footprints. There are forest musk deer around here. Soldier number 3 put down his binoculars and smiled at Yiqian. A few days ago, there were forest musk deer that ran into our restricted area. Our brothers in the cookhouse had to endure for a long time before we managed to stop ourselves from chasing them back and turning them into food on our plates. Yiqian immediately recalled the time when she was training with the Storm Commandos. They had also encountered a living creature in the forest. Her comrades in the Snowfield Brigade were all itching to catch it and roast it. They even mentioned several ways to roast it. That expression was still fresh in her memory. She didn't expect it to be the same when it came to the recruits. A few of the male soldiers stared at the forest musk deer footprints in the snow and wiped the corners of their mouths with a look of pity. It was a pity that they couldn't start a fire. Otherwise, they could hunt one down and eat it secretly. When it came to food, they had no taboos. When they were hungry, as long as it was edible, they would eat it. For example, right now they weren't just hungry. The only thing he could eat in his backpack was hardtack. Other than that, there was nothing else to fill his stomach. He didn't even have any water to drink. If he wanted to drink water, he would just grab a handful of snow and stuff it into his mouth until it melted before swallowing. Yiqian walked over to the male soldiers and stared at the row of animal prints with them. He sighed and said, "These things can't be eaten. The country protects animals, so we have to restrain ourselves." There weren't many left in total. Everyone killed was one less. If you want to eat wild game, go back to the base and catch some pheasants and hares. There were a lot of small game in the mountains. Every time the soldiers from the cookery squad went into the mountains, they could bring back more than a dozen of them. Now, he could forget about it. He couldn't even eat pheasants or hares in an armed off-road vehicle without a fire. Yiqian was also very hungry. He was so hungry that he couldn't help but swallow his saliva. She came over directly, and the few male soldiers who were resting did not notice. Suddenly, they heard her voice coming from behind them. They hurriedly got up from their squatting positions and restrained the expressions on their faces. They always felt a little embarrassed when faced with the valiant female soldiers, but they still couldn't help but want to talk to the only female soldier in the entire team. A male soldier asked her softly, "Are you very hungry?" "A little. I didn't eat lunch, so my stomach is empty." Yiqian patted his stomach. He smacked his lips as if he had thought of something. He took out a hardtack from his pocket and sighed. Thinking about meat, eating the hardtack. I hope I can taste the meat. Yiqian tore open the packaging and started munching on the hardtack in front of the male soldiers. When the male soldiers saw this, they couldn't help but laugh. "If it's not enough, we still have more. Eat until you're full." "That's right. We can each save half a biscuit. 30 people can save 15 biscuits. It's definitely enough to fill your stomach." "Sai, I'm hungry too. I learned from you. Thinking about meat, eating the hardtack. I hope I can taste the meat." There was another round of laughter. The laughter was loud and clear, and it swept away the fatigue from the few hours of armed off-road vehicles. Chapter 33:04. At this time, they had already arrived at the place where they would rest for the night. They had also found a shelter. There were no tents or caves. Everyone dug a deep trench together and used tree branches to support the trench. Then, they covered the snow-colored camouflage clothing they wore during the day and took out the moisture-proof mattresses from their backpacks. Then, they laid out the windproof and warm sleeping bags in the trench. When the time came, they would crawl into the sleeping bags and squeeze each other to sleep. This was the conditions for a winter field march. There was nothing to be picky about. Back in the day, They had to climb snowy mountains and cross grasslands. They were able to overcome all difficulties without clothes or food to cover their bodies. Now, they even had a warm sleeping bag to sleep in at night. When it was time to rest, everyone sat in the trench. Yichien turned on the military Big Dipper handset and checked the route for the next day again. At the same time, he sent their location back to the base so that the base could monitor their current location at any time. After she was done with her work, she chatted with the male soldiers. When they talked about the competition during the day, male soldier number 2 directly asked male soldier number 1 what the difference was between their results. Male soldier number 1 took out a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it over. He sighed and said, "It's all here." Then he turned to ask Yichien, "How are you so fast? How come I've never heard of you before?" The various military academies also have a tournament. With your speed, you definitely qualify to participate in the tournament. He asked Yichien. The male soldiers over there had already seen Yichien's results. When they saw it, number 2 and the other male soldiers who were huddled together to look at it looked like their acupoints had been pressed. They didn't even make any sound of breathing. Is it really that scary? Let me see. A male soldier who didn't see the results took the score sheet from number 2's hands. When they were looking at the score sheet, Yichien answered number 1. Usually, only the juniors and seniors participate in the tournament. With your speed, you don't even need to be classified as a junior or senior. You could just go and beat anyone in the country. Male soldier number 1 had just finished speaking when one of his brothers suddenly shouted beside him, "Damn! Full marks." The time it took was twice as fast as brother number 1. The results during the day were only announced at night. Soldier number 1 no longer felt frustrated. He replied to his brother, who was so shocked that even his voice changed. "Yes, twice as fast as me. When I saw it, I just wanted to dig a hole and bury myself." Very quickly, the topic of conversation revolved around Yichien. They were asking questions and asking for guidance. The distance between them grew closer and closer, and the topics they talked about increased. At midnight, the campsite was so quiet that one could vaguely hear the howling of some wild beasts. There were wolves in this area. The 2 male soldiers on sentry duty were holding steel guns and wearing thick coats. They stood under a tree and watched the surroundings. It was too quiet on the mountain. It was so quiet that even the slightest movement of footsteps could be heard. Black shadows moved gently from the depths of the forest. They were fully armed and were making professional hand gestures as they approached Yi Jian's campsite. It wasn't just 1 or 2 black shadows. Instead, there were countless black shadows moving. They silently approached the sentinels bit by bit. Someone made a hand signal for a pincer attack. The 2 black figures were getting closer and closer to the sentinels. Just as the sentinels felt that something was amiss, they turned to the left. Just as they were about to shout, "Who is it?" their mouths were covered. Then they were struck on the back of their necks. In less than 30 seconds, they were carried away. The same thing happened to the other sentinel. Before he could react, he was struck unconscious. Chapter 33:05. The wind in the mountains was a little strong, and the sound of the wind was like that of a giant beast running amok. The 2 sentry soldiers who had been struck down took a total of 30 seconds to be dragged away. It was so fast that it was like the blink of an eye. They dragged them into the forest, tied them up with ropes, carried them, and set off again. With the night vision devices illuminating the path and the reflection of the snow, they could walk in the dark as if it was daytime. There was no resistance. The wind blew, and a few clumps of snow fell from the trees, smashing holes in the snow. There was no snow for a night, so the traces of activity during the day were still there. The hidden shadows disappeared into the snowy night. Yichien, who was nestled in her sleeping bag, gently opened her eyes. She nudged her comrade, who was about an arm's length away from her. As expected of an elite soldier, he immediately woke up with just a light nudge. "Shoo!" Yichien was afraid that he would make a move, so she covered his mouth with her hand. She slowly crawled out of her sleeping bag and whispered, "I think there's movement." Everyone who slept in the wilderness was on high alert. When a male soldier heard this, alarm bells went off in his heart. He slowly nodded to show that he already knew. Yi Qian removed her hand from his mouth and used the same method to wake up the other male soldier. Soon, a total of 10 male soldiers who were sleeping in the same trench quietly crawled out of their sleeping bags. They hugged the rifles that they had been sleeping in the same sleeping bag as them. They touched their combat daggers, and their sharp eyes turned cold in the darkness. There's movement. There's a situation. Yi Qian, who had woken up early, gently pushed away the snow-white camouflage coat that blocked the wind and snow. Slowly, she poked her head out to observe the situation outside. There was nothing outside, but the position where the sentry soldiers should have been was empty. Yi Qian's eyes suddenly turned sharp. She held her rifle tightly, made a snowball with both hands, and threw it into a clump of bushes. There was a whoosh, and there was no other movement. The 2 sentries were gone, along with the guns they had been on duty. They were gone, and their guns were gone. Something big had happened. Moreover, the sentry soldiers had live ammunition in their guns. The entire team quickly entered a level 1 alert. Only Yi Qian and the 3 squad leaders were near the sentry post. The 4 of them were inspecting the scene. 2 of them ambushed the sentries from the left and right, and 2 more came to their aid. Yi Qian looked at the footprints on the ground and gestured with his hands. His eyes were grave. 1 person in size 41 shoes, 2 in size 42 shoes, and 1 in size 40 shoes. They went into the mountains lightly. Based on the footprints at the scene and the footprints of the sentries, Yi Qian deduced that the 2 footprints of the sentries were clearly slanted to the left. These were the footprints left behind by the unconscious body that had uncontrollably slanted to the left. Behind the footprints were a few very shallow footprints. These were the footprints left behind by the sentries who had ambushed them from behind. I'll inform the team now and report the situation back. The squad leader of the first squad had a solemn expression on his face. The missing 7th sentinel was a soldier from his squad. Now that he had disappeared along with his loaded gun, the problem was extremely serious. To be able to quietly drag the 2 sentinels away, it was clear that the other party was not to be trifled with. Yi Qian naturally thought of this as well. She stood up and looked into the depths of the forest. The trees there were tangled, and the branches stretched out like a maze. It seemed like once you walked in, you would never be able to walk out again. This area was considered a restricted area. Even the locals were forbidden from entering. Now that the snow had sealed off the mountain, who could possibly appear here? Chapter 33:06. The only people who could possibly be here were the soldiers who were on winter training. So who could the other party be? Who had the ability to drag the sentinel away right under their noses without them noticing? Yi Qian narrowed his eyes slightly and called out to the squad leader who was about to get up to contact the base. Don't contact them for now. Let's observe the situation first. She now suspected that the people who dragged the sentinel away were none other than the veterans at the base. They didn't need to wait until the next day to return from the 80 kilometers cross-country mission. At the time, she had wondered why they had to spend the night outside. If the people who dragged the sentinel away were veterans, then it made sense. Yi Qian only had a guess, but he couldn't be sure. Who in our squad was a scout? Yi Qian asked the male soldier who had entered the guard. I need to go into the forest to check out the situation. I need a scout and an assaulter. Me, scout. Soldier number 4 raised his hand. Me, assaulter. Soldier number 2 raised his hand. Yi Qian slung his rifle onto his back and nodded. Okay, we'll set off in groups of 3. You guys hide here and wait for us to come back. Isn't that too few? Should we send a few more? The squad leader of Class 2 asked worriedly. Yi Qian shook his head. No need. We're just going into the forest to check out the situation. It's easier to be exposed if there are too many people. You guys guard the camp well and don't run around. If anything happens, we'll fight from the camp. They had scouted the area around the camp during the day and were familiar with the terrain. If they suddenly moved, no one could guarantee that there wouldn't be an ambush in the middle of the night. It was safer to stay in the camp and hide. In the forest, a few dark shadows huddled together and whispered. We can scare the rookies who haven't been on the battlefield, but it'll be difficult to scare Qing Niao. If Q King doesn't receive a letter in 5 minutes, Qing Niao must have guessed who killed the sentinel. It's already been 5 minutes. I bet Q King definitely hasn't received Qing Niao's letter, Big Eagle said in a low voice. The large condor said in a low voice. The tall condor nestled in the snow like a small snow bag, perfectly camouflaged. Along with him were Scouts Blood Swallow, Long Eagle, and Weaving Sparrow. Among them, Long Eagle, Weaving Sparrow, and Blood Swallow had worked with Yi Qian before. Only Eagle had not worked with Yi Qian before. At the same time, Bai He, Shuang, Qi Lu, and Luan Yao formed a team of 8. They carried out an ambush on the recruits, which was also a sneak attack. Bai He and the other 3 worked together to knock out the 2 sentinels. When the recruits entered the forest, the condor and the other 4 launched a sneak attack, taking down as many as they could. Since they wanted the recruits to see blood, the weapons used were naturally real swords and real guns, except for the fact that they weren't real bullets. There's something up ahead. Judging from a silhouette, it's Qing Niao leading her troops over. Long Eagle's low voice came through the earpiece. He was at the front and had been watching with binoculars. As long as the recruits walked out of the perimeter of the camp, he would be able to see them immediately. Just as he reminded the condor and the others to be careful, the silhouettes that had walked out of the perimeter of the camp suddenly turned back and disappeared from his field of vision in the blink of an eye. They went back again. Did Qing Niao notice something? He contacted his comrades. Qing Niao has always been alert. Before we set off, Q King specifically reminded us not to let our guard down. Long Eagle, move forward and observe from a closer distance, Bai He said in a low voice. She must have other arrangements on her side. Chapter 3307. Other than Eagle, the rest of the veterans had fought side by side with Yi Qian. Although they had only worked together once, Yi Qian had left a deep impression on them, especially Shuang. He and Yi Qian had accompanied the Chinese ambassador, Qin Xiu, to a neighboring country for negotiations. On the way back, he had witnessed Yi Qian's ferocity in battle. The kind of ferocity made even his own comrades tremble in fear. Holding a gun and sweeping the way, the neighboring country's military personnel who surrounded them fell in droves. Some were even shot in the head. From the city all the way to the border, it could be said that Yi Qian had played a key role in that mission. Later, Qin Xiu told the military leaders, if it wasn't for Yi Qian, they probably wouldn't have been able to return to China for a while. It could be seen that Yi Qian had played a huge role in that mission. Hearing this, Shuang pressed down on the microphone and said softly, Qing Niao's IQ is comparable to Q King's. Other than not having Q King's rich combat experience, she's very strong in all other aspects. She definitely wouldn't have retreated for no reason. She must have sensed something that made her vigilant, so she retreated. Chang'ing, pay attention to your surroundings when you move. Don't get attacked by her. Chang'ing hadn't worked with Yi Qian before, so he hadn't experienced Yi Qian's ferocity in battle. Although he hadn't experienced it, from yesterday's meeting, he could see how strong Yi Qian was. Facing a battle of attrition, not only did she not back down, she became more and more excited as she fought. In the end, she was even able to fight Eagle to a draw. Even if he hadn't fought side by side with her, he could tell. Before facing Yi Qian head-on, Chang'ing had already regarded Yi Qian as his #1 target to be wary of. On the other side, #2 asked Qing Niao, why did they retreat? Did you discover something? He was originally a scout, and he came from the same unit as the veterans Blood Swallow and Weaving Sparrow. When he achieved good results, the commander told him about the 2 veterans and showed him their photos. Who would have thought that the veterans mentioned by the commander actually appeared in another Special Forces unit and rose from the rank of 2nd lieutenant to captain? Now that he was in the same unit as the 2 best scouts that the commander had mentioned, the male soldier was afraid that he would embarrass his commander. He wanted to do everything to the best of his ability, especially the missions that belonged to him as a scout, so he treated them even more carefully. At this moment, he didn't find any problems, but the green bird seemed to have found something which made his heart skip a beat, thinking that he had missed something. Yi Jian smiled and said, "No, I just feel that there is no difference between us and a moving target if we walk there like this. If there is really an ambush in the forest, we will be killed silently like two sentinels as soon as we appear. I think it's better to sneak over. Better safe than sorry." As for why she changed her route, she simply felt that if she were Q King, she would definitely arrange for people to keep an eye on the camp. Once they discovered something wrong with the recruits, they would immediately make arrangements. Therefore, she couldn't just sneak over like this, or she would be killed instantly. She had just finished telling them that she was responsible for a 10-kilometer, snow-covered cross-country trip in less than an hour. If she was caught alive by the special forces in the base in the blink of an eye, it would be too embarrassing. For the sake of her reputation, she had to be careful. Chapter 33:08. Soldier number 2 heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. So it wasn't because he discovered something wrong, but because he felt that their current method of operation was wrong. Then how do we sneak our way over? He couldn't help but ask Yi Qian. Yi Qian smiled and said, "We'll change our direction. We still need to discuss this with the 3 squad leaders. One squad will stay behind to guard the campsite, while the other 2 squads will enter the forest at the same time. We'll conduct a thorough search." 3 squads were left behind to guard the campsite, while Squad 1 and Squad 2 were led by their squad leaders to leave the campsite and sneak into the forest. If they had been moving in a straight line earlier, then now they were moving in a diagonal line. Using the uneven terrain of the forest as a cover, Yi Qian, who was wearing a snow-white camouflage suit, led 2 male soldiers deep into the forest. Xia Jinyuan, who was left behind at the base, looked up at the time. It had been 10 minutes since Bai He and the others knocked out the 2 sentries. Until now, Yi Qian still hadn't contacted him. It was clear that this cunning little fox had guessed something and was starting to cooperate with him to teach the recruits a lesson. He didn't know how she had arranged for the battle with Bai He and the others. Bai He and the others were outstanding fighters in individual combat. One of them was definitely comparable to 3 or 4 recruits. Even if Yi Qian led 30 elite soldiers from various military regions, it would be difficult for him to win against the 8 of them. The satellite phone connected and Bai He's voice came through. Qing Niao's side has indeed sensed something. Originally, they only brought 3 people, but now they've brought 2 squads with them. They're moving in groups of 5. We originally planned to kill them as soon as they're alone, but that won't work anymore. We have to surround them. After listening to Bai He's report, Xia Jinyuan's sexy thin lips curled up slightly. Qing Niao understands our combat habits. She knows that we like to launch sneak attacks, especially those who are alone. 5 people take turns to advance. It's obvious that we don't give you a chance to launch sneak attacks. Let's go all out. Fire a few rounds of live ammunition. Don't aim too accurately, and don't aim too far. Increase the tension so that Qing Niao will understand what I mean. Will she really understand what you mean? Bai He asked uncertainly. Don't let her misunderstand and think that there are criminals in this area. Xia Jinyuan, who was blinded by the computer screen, rubbed his eyes with one hand and replied confidently, "She won't. Just fire the live ammunition. She will definitely understand my intentions." She understood him, knew him. Even if she couldn't command him, she would still know. It was a little regretful that he could deceive the male soldiers, but not her. If that was the case, Bai He had nothing to worry about, but now, he muttered to himself for a while, then said, "Chang Ying and the others found 2 squads of soldiers, but they didn't find Qing Niao." Ha ha ha! Xia Jinyuan laughed. His handsome face was full of pride. Recruit number 2, born in the Air Force. He killed half of the soldiers in a company by himself. Yi Jian will definitely take him with her. Number 4, who was once a scout and achieved 3rd-class merit in the International Scout Competition. She will definitely bring him along. Brother, don't underestimate the recruits. Although they're a little lazy and don't have actual combat experience, they've all participated in large-scale combat simulation exercises. They're not weak. The 8 of you have to be careful. Bai He was a little confused. Since you think highly of them, Shouldn't you send more people to make them bleed? Aren't you afraid that the 8 of us won't be able to complete the mission? Chapter 3309. Speaking of this, Lieutenant Colonel Xia's voice was laced with a chill. You've all been through hundreds of battles, yet you can't even handle a fresh recruit. Brother, guess how I'll reward you when you come back? There definitely won't be any good rewards. Bai's expression turned cold. Don't worry, I promise to complete the mission. He added, if we really have to shoot, I'll choose another way. Aren't the 2 sentries in our hands? We can simulate killing the captives and make them more nervous. It was a good way to liven up the atmosphere. If that was the case, Greenbird's suspicions that it might be a veteran would be shaken. It would be best if they could make Qing Miao believe them. Xia Jinyuan nodded in agreement. Yes, only the sentinels will have live bullets. The rest of them will only have blanks. You can use the rifle in the sentinel's hands to shoot and leave the bullets behind. You can also think of a way to make the atmosphere more tense. It'll be best if we can make Qing Miao believe that we're not the ones who kidnapped the 2 sentries. It'll add to the atmosphere of the actual battle. In short, they had to do what they had to do. Bai He silently gave their captain a thumbs up. When it came to ruthlessness, who would dare to say they were ruthless in front of their captain? There was really no one. After Xia Jinyuan ended the call, he stared at the computer without moving. His mind seemed to be blank, but he also seemed to be thinking about something. On the computer was the training plan for all the new recruits. They had to run 15 kilometers of weighted cross-country every day for 3 months nonstop. They had to run around the mountain roads and the training ground. They had to run 15 kilometers a day for 3 months, not a day less. They also had to drive all kinds of special vehicles every day and train all kinds of firearms every day. He had applied for 600,000 rounds of light and heavy machine gun ammunition from the logistics department. He had to use up all 600,000 rounds of ammunition in 3 months, which was equivalent to 30 people having to fire 200 rounds of ammunition every day. Each person had 200 rounds of ammunition, so 30 people had to fire more than 6,000 rounds of ammunition a day. Moreover, they were not blanks, but real bullets. It would take some time just to pick up the bullets in a day. They also had to know how to use all kinds of cannons, such as mortars and rocket launchers. Everything that flew in the sky and ran on the ground appeared on Xia Jinyuan's computer. This was the last 3 months of training after the first 3 months of basic training, which was half a year in total. In half a year's time, he wanted to train this group of elite soldiers into special forces who could directly fire at the enemy on the battlefield. Xia Jinyuan, who had been staring at the computer screen for several minutes, rubbed his face hard and sighed in a low voice. Recruits, you have to keep your cool. Don't let me down. Major General Yang was full of expectations for the final selection of 30 recruits. Similarly, Xia Jinyuan was also full of expectations for them. Very quickly, the sound of gunfire that made everyone's scalp go numb suddenly rang out in the depths of the quiet primitive forest. When the gunfire rang out, the faces of the 2 squads of recruits who had sneaked into the forest turned pale. They thought of the missing sentinel. Immediately after, another gunshot rang out. This time, the rifles in the hands of the male soldiers were loaded. 2 sentinels and 2 gunshots. Something must have happened. Yi Qian's face gradually turned serious. The sound of real bullets. They were not blanks. Could it be that her previous guess was wrong? Thinking of this possibility, Yi Qian immediately contacted all the squad leaders. All squads, pay attention. Squad 2, Squad 4, and I will rush to the source of the gunfire. All squads, advance with your weapons. Once you discover something, immediately take action. Roger, Roger, Roger. The orderly and cold voices rang out. Immediately, the night was covered with a layer of tension, casting an unprecedented shadow over the hearts of all the male soldiers. Chapter 33:10. The biggest problem Yi Qian and his men faced was that they did not have night vision goggles. Fortunately, They were equipped with communicators and electronic mobile communication devices so that they could contact each other at any time. Although it was inconvenient to walk without night vision goggles, the dense snowy light still illuminated the path beneath their feet. In the distance, they could constantly hear the sounds of beasts foraging for food at night. Hearing such sounds in the middle of the night would more or less make one's hair stand on end, but the male soldiers walking in the depths of the forest did not feel afraid because of this. Humans had a natural fear of the night, and, as a soldier, they had to overcome the fear deep in their hearts. Some people could even go to the lonely mountains and mountains where there were graves everywhere and sleep with their guns for the whole night. They were all people who had trained their courage, and now that everyone was gathered together, they were even less afraid of this. The male soldiers from the two squads began a carpet search. 5 men in a squad took turns to advance and became Yi Qian and his men's backup. As long as something happened to Yi Qian, they would immediately rush over to provide support. Yi Qian, male soldier number 2, and male soldier number 4 advanced faster than them. They followed the gunshots and advanced without any delay along the way. From here, Yi Qian could see how powerful male soldier number 2 was. His speed at night was the same as his speed during the day, and he was not affected at all. He also saw how outstanding male soldier number 4 was. His scouting ability was quite strong. When Yi Qian and male soldier number 2 saw this, the two of them immediately covered for male soldier number 4. The three of them split up and advanced quickly. Bai He received the latest order from Xia Jinyuan at the base. He wanted them to lead the captured sentries forward and see how long it would take for the recruits to catch up. Bai He glanced at the 2 sentries who were awoken by the gunshots and covered their heads. They were now unbelievably quiet. He whispered to Xia Jinyuan, "Captain, they don't have night vision goggles. Don't make us turn back and look for them when the time comes. Let's just lure them here and wipe them all out. That should be enough, right? It's too far off. Let them continue moving. Let them walk for a few hours and see how they react. I still haven't received any calls from Qing Miao, so I can't figure out what plan she has." Now, Xia Jinyuan, who had been staying up all night, took a few sips of strong coffee and wiped his mouth with a tissue. He replied, "Now, not only are the male soldiers playing games with you, but Qing Miao is also playing games with you and me. You mean that Qing Miao heard our gunshots and still suspects that we did it?" The White Crane asked again, "So, she didn't call you and went straight into battle with us?" Xia Jinyuan, whose mouth was full of the smell of coffee, answered directly, "I don't know. That's why it's more interesting." "Yes, it is." Bai He looked at Yi Qian to see what was going to happen next. When he spoke again, he was more than excited. "If there was a bloody incident, we not to spare any mercy." "Okay." Xia Jinyuan, whose deep eyes flashed with a wolf-like cold light, smirked and replied coldly, "Go ahead and do it. Don't treat them as soldiers in the team. Just treat them as enemies that need to be killed." If they treated the male soldiers as enemies that needed to be killed, the veterans would not be merciful. Chapter 33:11. Before ending the call with Bai He, Xia Jinyuan smiled and said, "I forgot to remind you that Qing Miao is very sensitive to smells. She can smell that the blood you spilled is not human blood. So, don't stop until she finds you. Keep moving forward and widen the distance between you and them before you surround them. I won't be there. You can arrange the battle yourselves. I'm just waiting for your results." Bai He, who was about to end the call, smiled and replied, "We didn't forget to remind us. You didn't remind us on purpose. The blood has already been spilled. It's impossible for us to turn back now. If Qing Miao really finds out, it's okay. We won't be merciful. I remember that Qing Miao is a commander. Not bad. She has arranged the rear camp and assault properly. Long Eagle originally planned to go back to their camp and kill a few of them, but she left a squad of people to guard the camp, which made it difficult for Long Eagle to attack. Now, he's rushing over to join us. There were 10 recruits in a squad. Although the veterans usually look down on them for being slow, they were all very strong. They were just not as good as the Snowfield Brigade. Even a powerful Special Forces soldier like Long Eagle would have to think twice if he wanted to kill 10 elite soldiers alone. In the end, he decided to join his comrades first and then attack together. Xia Jinyuan didn't deny it. I've already revealed a lot about Qing Miao. If I don't help her, I won't be able to live with my conscience. Conscience? Their captain, their king. Would he talk about conscience on the battlefield? When he first joined the team, he introduced himself by saying, "I'm a person who has no conscience on the battlefield." At that time, everyone was shocked by his words. He was young, but he had a deep sense of self-awareness. By now, King Q had experienced countless battles, big and small. It was obvious that he was spouting nonsense to talk about conscience with him. After ending the call, he conveyed Xia Jinyuan's latest order. When the veterans who were dragging the 2 sentries received the order from Q King, their eyes turned cold. "Qing Miao, new recruits, let's meet again in 2 to 3 hours." It was now 12:21 in the morning, 19 minutes after the 2 sentries disappeared. Yi Qian and the 2 male soldiers, who were in contact with the 3 squad leaders, finally found the place where the gunshots came from. When they heard the gunshots, they could feel that the gunshots were not far from them. When the gunshots rang out, they immediately rushed over. Squad 1 and Squad 2 searched in a covert manner to avoid being ambushed. Squad 3 stayed behind to guard the camp to prevent a sneak attack from the rear. It could be said that from the time they discovered that the sentinel was missing to the time they heard the gunshots and found the location of the gunshots, it could be said that the time it took to find the location of the gunshots was quite short. However, there were no suspicious people nearby. Number 4 dug out the warhead from the snow, his face extremely gloomy. Our warhead. With 2 warheads in his hands, Yi Qian stared at the traces left behind. After the 2 sentries were knocked unconscious, they were dragged here. After being dragged here, they were directly pushed to the side, leaving 2 traces of lying down in the snow. At the same time, there was blood splattered all around. The temperature in the mountains was too low, so the blood and snow coagulated together. Under the light of flashlight, it looked like plum blossoms blooming in winter. There was no beauty to it. His heart was pounding. Male soldier number 2 was in charge of guarding. Yi Qian took off his gloves, bent down, and scooped the shocking frost blood into his palm. He slowly brought it to his nose and sniffed. It was extremely rusty and smelled fishy, but it was not human blood. This was animal blood, not human blood. Chapter 33:12. Just in case, Yi Qian dug out a few more clumps of blood from the snow. She used her fingers to turn the clumps of snow into blood. She sniffed and licked the blood to confirm that it was not human blood. It's some kind of animal blood, not human blood. The missing sentinels are not in danger for now. Yi Jian wiped her blood-stained hands on the white snow a few times. She put on her gloves again and contacted the monitors of the 3 classes. Class 3, stay where you are. Class 1 and Class 2, speed up the search and meet us as soon as possible. The mountain area was large, so it would not be easy to catch someone. The only way was to follow the footprints left behind by the enemy. She was certain that there were 2 groups of people. One group was dragging the sentinels, and the other group was being chased by squads 1 and 2. Based on the footsteps, she and the 2 male soldiers were being chased by 4 people. The 4 people also had to carry the 2 sentinels, so they couldn't be walking very fast. Soon, the tracks left behind in the snow proved that Yi Qian's judgment was correct. The 2 sentinels were indeed fine. The 2 gunshots did not hit the sentinels. Seeing the footprints, Yi Qian's heart, which was in her throat, finally calmed down. However, she could not completely relax until she saw the 2 sentinels. Once she saw them and confirmed that they were fine, she could finally relax. Yi Qian still believed that the people who took the sentinels were not strangers. Her intuition told her that even if the base's special forces were involved, the gunshots were to create an atmosphere of fear. In her previous life, she had relied on her sharp intuition to avoid danger time and time again. As for the group of people chasing after the sentinels from squads 1 and 2, Yi Qian reminded the 2 squad leaders The group you're chasing should be more difficult to deal with. Be careful of being killed by them from behind. There were gunshots and animal blood. The base's special forces must have been mobilized to train the new recruits. Captain Xia probably did not make a move. If he did, she would be able to tell if it was him, even if it was just a shadow in front of her. So, for safety's sake, he must have stayed at the base to oversee the situation and watch the show. It was easy to guess what kind of expression he had now. He definitely didn't mind having too many things on his plate. The messier and more complicated things were, the more he liked them. This person was someone who never thought that there was too much trouble. He only thought that things weren't lively enough. Very soon, the squad leaders of Class 1 and Class 2 came back with news that the group of people chasing after them had started to clean up their tracks. The weather was also starting to get ugly. Heavy snow the size of goose feathers started to fall. The squad leader of Class 1 secretly cursed. He leaned against a pine tree and said to Yi Qian, "The tracks have been buried by the snow. We've lost track of them." This was the biggest problem. If they couldn't even find a trace of the other party, it was naturally impossible to catch up to them. Class 1, open up the Big Dipper map and cut out the specific locations of me and Class 2's class monitor. Take a look at the tracks you've already taken. You should be able to find something. Yi Qian, who was moving forward, did not stop because they could still find the footprints left behind. After sending out his location, he waited for Class 1 to cut out the map. 2 minutes later, Class 1 completed their positioning and cut out the map. They then connected their location, Class 2's specific location, and Yi Qian's location to form a line. As he stared at the map closely, he suddenly understood what Yi Qian meant. He could not hide the joy on his face as he said cheerfully, "I got it. You guys just keep moving forward. Don't worry about us." Through the positioning of the three parties and the tracks they had taken, the group they were chasing had always been moving closer to the group Qing Yao was chasing. So, even if they had lost track of the other party, they could still roughly determine the other party's path. Chapter 33:13. Squad 2 also discovered something and immediately reported it to Yi Qian. "Someone on our side is moving alone. Judging from the footprints, he's heading in the same direction as you guys. They're trying to converge now, so we'll stop them from converging." Hearing this, Yi Qian's eyes flashed coldly. It didn't matter if he was a veteran from the base or not. He was the enemy they needed to surround and stop. The two male soldiers, number 2 and number 4, had been following Yi Qian closely. They heard every word she said clearly, so they could feel the sharpness in her every word. At this moment, the female soldier gave them a different feeling. It felt like she had a sharpness that was very similar to that of a veteran soldier. It was a sharpness that came from someone who had killed before but wasn't afraid of killing. Especially when Yi Qian said, "We'll stop them from converging." The undisguised, murderous aura coming from her made the two male soldiers feel a chill in their hearts. At the same time, the same thought flashed through their minds. Qing Yao must have been on the battlefield and killed before. As soon as this thought flashed through the minds of the two male soldiers, the way they looked at Yi Qian changed. Although they were all elite soldiers from their respective military regions, they had never killed anyone before. A soldier who had killed someone before was different from a soldier who hadn't killed anyone before. It was like the difference between an adult and a child. The two male soldiers quickly looked at each other in tacit understanding. In the faint light of the snow, they saw the same shock on each other's faces. Yi Qian didn't notice their secretly sizing her up. She only had one goal now, to rescue the captured sentries. The heavy snow drifted down. Braving the wind and snow, the soldiers treated the darkness as if it was daytime. They advanced tirelessly. They had already been walking for 2 hours. At first, Bai could still receive the location of the male soldiers and Yi Qian from the base. After walking for about an hour, they could no longer receive any information from the base. At the same time, their communication with the base was cut off. At this point, the two sides were truly facing off. 2 hours later, they reached the location Xia Jinyuan had specified. Bai left the two sentries to the side and contacted Chong Ying, who was acting alone, to ask for his current location. Long Eagle had already met up with Big Eagle and the others. At this moment, they were rushing over together. When White Crane contacted them, he reported their situation back. They've probably been instructed by Qing Yao. They've been following behind us all this time. Earlier, Blood Swallow could still detect their electromagnetic waves, but now, we can't hear anything. They've gone into electromagnetic silence. It was good to have tools with them. They had a certain advantage. The male soldiers didn't have any. They only had rifles, daggers, and communicators. Other than that, they didn't have any high-tech weapons to rely on. But now, the high-tech equipment in their hands was useless. The other party had obviously found out. Just as Shui Yin was about to say something, he suddenly heard a gunshot from Bai He's side. His eyebrows twitched as he blurted out, "They've caught up." Yes, he had caught up. Qing Yao was too fast. She killed Qi Lu, who was in charge of guarding the base, with one shot. Bai He ended the call right after he finished speaking. There was no time to say anything else. The gunshot came from the front. The male soldiers of Squad 2 and Squad 3 all heard it. The male soldier in charge of the communicator immediately turned on the communicator and canceled electromagnetic silence. In less than 3 seconds, Qing Miao's voice could be heard. "We found the target. Fire support. Be careful of ambushes along the way." That meant they were going to fight. Chapter 33:14. Got it. Be careful. Got it. The enemy has live ammunition. Be careful. The squad leaders of Class 1 and Class 2 replied quickly. The 18 male soldiers quickened their pace and rushed towards the location sent by Yi Qian. Since the battle had already started, they had to provide support immediately. Yi Qian did not voice his suspicions, so the male soldiers did not know that the person who did this could be a veteran from the base. They were still trying to guess the identity of the other party. She reminded them, "The target is very likely to ambush you and cut off your support. Don't worry about me. Remember, don't act alone." Yi Qian had some experience fighting against the veterans from the base. If she opened fire and declared war, they would definitely work together to cut off her support. This meant that the 18 male soldiers were also in danger. According to the combat habits of the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces, they would not attack openly if they could. The 18 male soldiers lacked actual combat experience and reaction. Although they had the advantage in numbers, they would not be able to avoid being taught a lesson by the veterans. And it would not be a normal lesson. It would be a harsh one. Yi Qian had just ordered the 18 male soldiers to be careful and be on guard against ambushes. Chang Ying and Bai He had already started fighting. They made a prompt decision to cut off Qing Yao's support and eliminate all the male soldiers at the same time. They did not continue to rendezvous with Bai He. Instead, they turned around to look for the 18 male soldiers. The 18 male soldiers were more or less nervous. After all, the enemy had live ammunition. There were also their comrades. They were afraid that if they were too aggressive, they would cause an accident to their comrades who had fallen into the enemy's hands. All we have are blanks. The enemy has live ammunition. Be careful not to be left alone. 5 in a group. Take turns to cover the advance. The 2 squad leaders did not blindly move to support Yi Qian. They also had their own battle plan. A few of them were on guard while the rest of them stared at the map drawn on the snowy ground. They would first surround the enemy and then attack from all sides. Now Qing Yao is here. Our target is in this area. The 18 of us will be divided into 3 groups, A, B, C, and C. Each group will have 6 people. Group A's 6 people will go around here and avoid the target's area. We will hide here and ambush. Remember, don't make any movements along the way. You must get here first. Only by getting here first can you cut off the target's escape route. Also, guard the rear for Qing Yao so that the enemy won't attack from behind. Yes. The 6 men who received the order all nodded solemnly. The other party had live ammunition in their hands. If they did not cut off the other party's path, Qing Yao, who had already rushed to the front, would be in danger of being attacked from behind. Team B will be responsible for surrounding them from this area. Team C and Team C will surround them from here. Once the target appears within Team A's range, eliminate them immediately. Do not give them a chance to escape. They illegally possess lethal weapons. Your own safety is the top priority. If necessary, just kill them. All teams need to report whether there is something wrong or not. The signalers will immediately go back to electromagnetic silence. Going back to electromagnetic silence every 10 minutes was to prevent the enemy from immediately detecting whether they were close or not. Also, each team could maintain communication with each other. If there was anything wrong, they could report it immediately. Each team had a clear division of labor and a clear goal. After the entire battle arrangement was completed, the three groups of male soldiers immediately dispersed. Chapter 33:15. Just as Yiqian expected, Chang Ying and the others, who were experts in ambushes, began to attack the male soldiers. There were no gunshots, and everything happened silently. Yiqian, on the other hand, was much more successful. She killed Qi Lu with one shot and drew Bai He's attention to her. When number 2 and number 4 heard the gunshot, it was as if they had received the signal to move. They quickly closed in on their targets. They both knew that the rifles in their hands were blanks and couldn't hurt anyone. Qing Yao's shot was just a distraction. She drew all of the target's attention to herself so that the two of them could move more easily. The two of them looked extremely tense as they surrounded Qing Yao as fast as they could. Even though Qi Lu was killed by Yi Qian in one shot, the others were still there. Xue Ying, Lun, and Bai He were not to be trifled with. Yi Qian's shot made them react immediately. Number 2 and number 4 rushed out. Lun stayed behind to watch over the two sentries. Xue Ying and Bai He were full of murderous intent as they stabbed at Qing Yao with sharpened daggers. On the other side, Qi Lu, who had died, saw Yi Qian sneak up from behind like a snow fox from the depths of the forest. Her slender body was unbelievably light as she sneaked up on Lun from behind. The moment she appeared, Qi Lu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He was hit in the chest by her blanks at a distance of 300 meters. Even though he was wearing a bulletproof vest, a bullet to the chest. That feeling was a mix of emotions. If today was a real battle, he would have died a martyr tonight. Touching his chest that was numb from the shock of the blanks, Qi Lu gently exhaled and silently stood to the side to watch the battle. When Lun realized that something was wrong behind him, he felt a chill run down the back of his neck. He reacted quickly and threw himself forward, then rolled to the side and narrowly avoided Yi Qian, who was sneaking up on him from behind. When the two sentinels heard the sounds of fighting, they knew that their brothers had arrived. The tension in their hearts slowly loosened. Their hands and feet were tied, and their mouths were gagged. They couldn't speak, and they couldn't break free from the ropes, let alone escape. The two of them were tied to the same tree, and even if they wanted to escape, there was no way for them to do so. Lun and Yi Qian had worked together before. When Yi Qian approached him again, he hurriedly said, "Q King wants to let the recruits see blood. We won't fight. Let's fake the fight." A fake fight? The fight had already started, and there was still a need to fake it? Yi Qian smiled at Lun. Her bright eyes and white teeth made her look like a person made of snow. Her entire body exuded a cold aura. Since we've already started fighting, then let's fight for real. No faking it. As she spoke, she waved the dagger in her hand towards Lun's body. She was afraid that Lun had some tricks up his sleeve and deliberately set a trap to distract her. Lun was so frightened that he immediately dodged. His back was covered in cold sweat from Yi Qian's seriousness. Calm down, calm down. Qing Yao, let's calm down. Q King really said that as long as you show yourself, the rest will be between us and the recruits. I'll leave the two sentinels to you now. I have to hurry over and meet up with Long Ying to teach the recruits a lesson. Tonight's focus is on the recruits, not you. Q King wants to let the recruits see the real deal. He's even prepared the helicopter. If anything happens to the recruits here, the helicopter will immediately rescue them. Yi Qian, who didn't know about Operation Blood, finally believed it and stopped his fierce attacks. Since it has nothing to do with me, why didn't Q King contact me and inform me? Chapter 33:16. Q King will have to explain this to you. I really can't answer you. I have to go now. I'll leave the sentinels to you. With that, Loon turned around and left. Every word he said was true. There was no falsehood in his words. Yi Qian saw that he really left him behind and left. Naturally, he believed him. Operation First Blood, she murmured softly. She chewed on the words, and her furrowed brows slowly relaxed. This was indeed something that Captain Xiao would do. He had tolerated the recruits for a long time and had high hopes for them. It was understandable that he would arrange a training session to make the recruits more aware of the reality in front of them. He even prepared a helicopter. Yi Qian couldn't help but look up at the few figures fighting in the snow. If the veterans really beat the recruits to the point where they needed a helicopter to rescue them, wouldn't that miss the training even more? Captain Xia couldn't have not thought of that, right? He definitely would have thought that it would take 100 days to recover from a serious injury. If the recruits were really beaten to the point where they were hospitalized, they wouldn't be able to train normally for a few months. Therefore, a little blood would definitely be seen, but it definitely wouldn't be serious enough to require a helicopter to be dispatched. Yi Qian, who was supposed to be participating in the battle, became the most relaxed person. He stood in front of the two tied-up sentinels in the heavy wind and snow. He narrowed his eyes and observed the fight between the recruits and the veterans. Qi Lu, who had been killed by Yi Qian, walked over silently. Yi Qian saw this and couldn't help but smile. She really didn't know that she could be excluded from Operation First Blood. If she had known, she definitely wouldn't have used a blank bullet to make Qi Lu take a bullet. When he came closer, Yi Qian asked softly, "Are you okay? Does it hurt?" Yi Qian had experienced what it felt like to be hit by a blank bullet. The feeling of being hit was extremely uncomfortable. It would instantly trigger the fear in the depths of one's heart, and even cause one's mind to go blank for a few seconds. Hearing this, Qi Lu touched her chest and smiled bitterly. The pain is secondary. The main thing is that I haven't been hit by a blank bullet in a long time. When you suddenly shot me, I really thought I was dead. Yi Jian pressed the corner of her mouth and tried not to laugh out loud. The second Qi Lu was shot, even though he was 300 meters away, his body language was very rich. He was stunned and could not believe that he was killed with one shot. Yi Qian tried his best to control the corners of his mouth from rising too high for Qi Lu to see. He pretended to sigh helplessly. If I knew that we were targeting the recruits tonight, I definitely wouldn't have opened fire just now. I didn't think that you would suddenly appear and bump into the muzzle of my gun. I didn't want to bump into the muzzle of your gun either. Also, I found a blind spot for myself to guard against the blank bullet in your hand. But I didn't think that you would be able to kill me with one shot. Qi Lu's words made Yi Qian's expression turn slightly serious. She shook her head with a smile in her eyes. Her cheerfulness was swept away and replaced with a heavy gaze. Wrong. For sniper, there is no such thing as a blind spot. So, the blind spot that you think of is not a blind spot for me. Uncle Chin told her that the reason why snipers were feared was because they could find the enemy hiding in a blind spot and kill them with one shot. This was the strength of a sniper. She, on the other hand, had always strived to become a world-class sniper like Uncle Chun. Even if the place where Qi Lu was hiding was a blind spot, she would still be able to see his blind spot when she climbed up the tree and opened fire. Chapter 33:17. Qi Lu stopped smiling because of Yi Qian's words. He lowered his head in thought for a moment, then raised his head and nodded. That is indeed the case. For a sniper, there are no blind spots. The shot I took tonight was worth it. Because he was also a sniper who needed to kill his target in one shot no matter where they were. Yi Jian reminded him because she knew that he was a sniper. Seeing that he suddenly realized what she meant, she couldn't help but smile. She smiled until her eyebrows were curved and her eyes were watery. Does that mean that I've made up for my mistake? Not at all. You only have merit, not fault. The playfulness in her tone made Chi Lu laugh quietly. Although she had only worked with her once, the female soldier Qing Niao gave her the impression that she was extraordinarily confident. She was a heroine. Meanwhile, the two bound sentries clearly heard the conversation between the two of them. Only then did they realize that everything had been arranged by their captain. The ones who had knocked them unconscious and carried them away, shocking everyone to the point where they couldn't fall asleep, were the veterans. The veterans took away the two sentries without any of the recruits noticing. If they were real outlaws, what would the result be? The result was chilling. Chi Lu glanced at the two recruits, who suddenly shifted uneasily. Her gaze was different from the calm she had when she was talking to Yi Qian. Instead, there was a thin layer of cold light. Now, they should know how much they are worth. Did they really think that they could carry guns onto the battlefield just because they joined the team? Based on their performance tonight, they could only be whittled down. 1 second they were standing, the next they were down. Yi Qian had already noticed the cold light in Chi Lu's eyes. He also silently looked at the two male soldiers who had been captured. When she saw them shift uneasily, a faint smile appeared in her eyes. Operation Sea Blood was indeed a good way to spur the recruits to work hard. He did not discuss further with Chi Lu. On the other side, Bai He and Shuiying were fighting with soldiers number 2 and 4. Their moves were swift and fierce, as if they were fighting an enemy. Furthermore, they were using military daggers. After a few rounds, Yi Qian could see that male soldier number 2 was clearly stronger than male soldier number 4. Every move he made was swift and fierce, and they were all killer moves. They attacked directly and rarely defended. Male soldier number 4 was strict in defense. He didn't have the swift and fierce aura of male soldier number 2 and preferred to attack in a roundabout way. From this, it could be seen that he was a person who thought before he acted. This type of male soldier was more suited for backline combat, while male soldier number 2 was suited for assault. But the special forces that the Snowfield Brigade needed were capable of backline combat, as well as assault. The good thing was that the recruits had a good foundation. Once they were trained hard, it wouldn't take long for them to reach Captain Xia's requirements. But before they could reach Captain Xia's requirements, they would have to suffer a lot. Before he could finish thinking, Yi Qian saw Bai He kick male soldier number 2's thigh. Male soldier number 2's figure swayed and crashed into a tree behind him. When he crashed, Yi Qian saw that his movements were clearly sluggish. It could be seen how hard and powerful Bai He's kick was. Male soldier number 2, who came from the Air Force, was famous for being ruthless in his own company. His best achievement was when he single-handedly attacked an entire company during a drill. He single-handedly wiped out half of the company's military strength. That was how he became famous. Chapter 33:18. Such a ruthless character would not be defeated so easily. He slammed into a tree and saw the enemy's knife coming at him. He leaned to the side and hugged the pine tree with both hands. Using the strength of his hands to support himself, he lifted his right leg that was hidden in the snow and kicked the enemy with the knife. Clearly, he had underestimated Bai He's strength. As Bai He dodged the kick, the knife in his hand fiercely stabbed at the male soldier's leg. Yi Qian, who was watching the battle from a distance, only saw the sharp knife slashing through the snow. Her pupils constricted. Rip! She heard the sound of pants being torn and also heard male soldier number 2 suck in a cold breath. Male soldier number 2's right leg was bleeding. Fortunately, he was wearing thermal pants and cotton pants, so the wound was not too deep. Even so, he still felt waves of pain in his leg. His face contorted in pain as he growled, "You are veterans from the martial arts." He could guess who it was that wanted their lives. Every single one of his moves was a deadly move, and he didn't show any mercy at all. Are these veterans crazy? Shooting and stabbing. What were they trying to do? Bai He, whose identity had been guessed, laughed softly. What else could it be? Do you really think they are a bunch of fugitives? If they were, do you think those 2 rookies would have a chance to survive? 2 rifles and 10 rounds of live ammunition. That's enough to make you suffer. Even though he was talking, he did not stop attacking. When he reached male soldier number 2's side, he started to struggle. Soldier number 4 was having a harder time. His whole body was pressed into the snow, and below his neck was a military combat dagger that glinted coldly. Shui-ing, who was holding the dagger, had a fierce look in his eyes. He kept using his arm to stab the dagger at male soldier number 4's neck. He used a lot of force, so much so that male soldier number 4 kept struggling in his throat. He used his arm to stop the dagger from stabbing him. At this time, male soldier number 4 had a vague idea of who wanted his life. Every move they made was meant to take someone's life. They were ruthless and cruel. When fighting with them, one could not help but think of a terrifying animal, a wolf. Once a wolf set its eyes on its prey, it would not give up easily. It would keep pestering its prey until it was exhausted and then wait for an opportunity to kill it. And he was now the prey in the eyes of the wolf. He did not doubt that he would be stabbed by the dagger at all. Therefore, he had to give it his all. He would fight out with him. Soldier number 4, whose eyes were filled with ruthlessness, suddenly roared and grabbed Shui-ying's wrist, using his greatest strength to pull it apart bit by bit. "Give up struggling, rookies," Shui-ying said coldly. There was not a trace of emotion in his voice. Didn't you want to go to the battlefield with a gun? Tonight, I will let you experience what it is like to be on the battlefield. What it was like to be on the battlefield? It was the taste of death. It was the taste of racing against the Grim Reaper. It was the taste of hearing bullets and cannons exploding beside him, but he was powerless to do anything about it. The 18 male soldiers were taught a lesson by the 7 veterans. When the 18 male soldiers saw how the veterans treated their enemies so fiercely, they instantly understood why the veterans disdained their challenge. The veterans looked down on the challenge of hitting a rock with an egg. Chapter 33:19. Blood slowly seeped out from between number 4's fingers, but before it could completely seep out, the blood froze due to the low temperature. When the cold, bone-piercing dagger was pressed against his neck, when the sharp blade cut through his skin, he really thought that he would die in the hands of the veteran in that second. In that second, he saw the arrival of the Grim Reaper, with a ferocious smile on his face, waiting for him to be killed by the veteran, waiting to take away his soul, until the dagger in the veteran's hand lightly grazed his neck. Even though the sharp pain was felt, it made him feel like he had survived a disaster. He was not taken away by the Grim Reaper. He was still alive. "How do you feel?" A clear voice came from above his face. Number 4, who was lying flat on the snow and gasping for breath, moved his stiff eyes and blinked lightly. He saw a black shadow looming over him and nodded in a daze, replying, "I feel like I've taken a walk through hell. It feels terrible." After he opened his mouth, he realized his voice was hoarse. He was shocked speechless. Yi Qian looked down at number 4, who had narrowly escaped death, and reached out his hand. "Come, get up first." "No, thank you. I want to lie down for a while more." Number 4 shook his head. As he slowly came back to his senses, his eyes were filled with complicated emotions. He just wanted to lie down and feel what it was like to be pressed into the snow again. Yi Qian half squatted, his gaze narrowed as he looked at number 4, who was slowly coming back to his senses. "I've seen how the veterans kill their enemies. As long as they show their daggers, they'll definitely kill you in one move. They won't fight with you for too long. Just now, they were kind enough to show mercy. If you were a real enemy, the veterans wouldn't even give you a chance to speak. They'll pull out their daggers, and when they retract them, their HP bar will be full. You won't even know how you died." Number 4 opened his eyes and stared at the sky. Snowflakes fell on his face and into his eyes. After a while, he said softly, "The veterans aren't old. We're too far behind them." Only after experiencing it in their hands would they know how powerful the veterans were and how ignorant they were. Yi Qian smiled. "You're not weaker than them. You're just lacking a little bit of experience. All right, get up." They've already packed up and left. It's time for us to return. It was time to return to the camp. She had to go back and see how many recruits were injured. You too, help them up. Yi Qian had the 2 sentries who had been untied and could finally move freely come over to help the 2 male soldiers, number 2 and number 4, who had been beaten so badly by the veterans that they could not get up. Although the 2 sentries were not injured, they had experienced the savagery of the veterans. For a moment, they were silent and did not know what to say. You support me, I support you, each supporting the other all the way back to the camp in silence. After Bai He, Shuang, and the others finished dealing with the new recruits, they only greeted Yi Qian and left. They really lived up to the saying, "Come without a shadow, leave without a trace." All of them had been beaten up too badly, and all of them had walked through the gates of hell. Yi Qian did not break their silence. Instead, he led the 4 of them back, 1 deep and 1 shallow. Other than the recruits who had stayed behind to guard the camp, the rest of the 30 recruits had been beaten up. A few of the male soldiers had their arms dismembered and then were fiercely reattached by the veterans. Right now, even carrying a gun on their shoulders was very difficult. Chapter 33:20. When Yi Qian saw that they were all beaten black and blue and were staggering as they walked, it was both expected and unexpected. Operation Bloodshed. Although it did not take their lives, it was true that they did not show any mercy. This beating, it would take at least half a month for them to recover. When the male soldiers who stayed behind at the campsite came over and saw the miserable state of their comrades, they remained silent like Yi Qian. They silently helped their comrades who could not even walk and returned to the campsite with their mouths tightly pressed together. They were all very silent. No one spoke during the entire journey. Everyone was expressionless. Only their eyes that were looking ahead were dark and bright, revealing a steel-like coldness. Some things and some people quietly changed on this night. Everything in the past became the past. Glory, position, military rank, they all became ephemeral clouds that could not be grasped in one's hands. The only thing that could be grasped and firmly controlled was strength. In this place, strength was the only thing that mattered. 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 The rising sun slowly emerged from the horizon on the other side of the mountain. Soon, its light illuminated the entire forest. The snow and fog were dense. It was like a paradise on earth. A new day had arrived, and a new journey had begun. In the depths of the vast mountains, a group of people was slowly climbing along the foot of the mountain. Above them, a helicopter was hovering. Xia Jinyuan, who was sitting in a helicopter, opened the cabin door and looked down with a pair of binoculars in his hand. Descend another 10 meters. He looked down and felt that it was still not clear enough. He then asked GK, who was piloting the helicopter, to lower the helicopter's altitude until he could clearly see everyone below through the binoculars. Then he asked the T-6 helicopter to maintain the altitude. He then handed the binoculars in his hand to a high-ranking leader who was also sitting in the helicopter. Come take a look at them. They're really fine, Xia Jinyuan said helplessly as he handed the binoculars over. They can still walk. They're crawling and rolling. You'll know when you see them. Major General Yang forcefully pulled the binoculars from his hand. At the same time, he glared at Xia Jinyuan, who was still smiling at him. If anything happens to them, you'll be the first to suffer. Yes, you're right. So, how would I dare to let anything happen to them? Xia Jinyuan secretly rubbed his eyebrows in the face of Major General Yang, who had rushed over from Beijing overnight for fear that he would do something to the new recruits. Before he could put down his hand, he suddenly felt a fierce wind coming from his left. He subconsciously wanted to dodge, and his arm reflexively swung over. Then he heard Major General Yang gnashing his teeth. Xia Jinyuan, are you trying to rebel? F***CK. Boss Yang's fist. Xia Jinyuan retracted his fist almost instantly. His whole body was pressed down by Major General Yang. Worst of all, his handsome face was crushed so hard by Major General Yang's elbow that his facial features were squashed and deformed. Calm down, calm down. Xia Jinyuan, who had been lectured by his old leader, could not even speak clearly. His head was pressed down, but there was nothing wrong with his brain. He hurriedly said, calm down, calm down. Anger is not good for your health. Major General Yang did not let go. Instead, he pressed down even harder, to the point that Xia Jinyuan found it difficult to breathe. You have to help each and every one of them walk, and you call this good? Xia Jinyuan, you're really brave. Major General Yang was furious. Yesterday, this kid had mentioned to him that he wanted the new recruits to see blood. At that time, he was confused and did not know what was going on, so he agreed in a muddle-headed manner. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.